fine, you write the next one, and so on and so forth. That's life. So if you are in higher education, or let's say if you're in a career right now, your appraisal comes once a year. But if you don't work 365 days of the year as good as you can't suddenly get a good appraisal by working 5 days prior. That's not life. So that intermittent, sporadic aspect, anybody who has that approach will not do well in their life. And so find the champion within the champion. In your sleep also there is a champion. In your wakefulness there is a champion. In your fun there is a champion. In your social life there is a champion. While you put in effort there is a champion. That's how you become a champion.
Very well put. And in fact, this reminds me of a very tiny phrase I read in your book, which made a lot of sense to me, is that success is longitudinal, that it's cumulative. Like what Dr. Samir said, that Sachin Tendulkar's story is not about all centuries, but several zeros as well. So tell us something about, but let's please take us a little deeper into this phenomenon of success not being longitudinal. Oh, sorry, success is longitudinal.
I think it's similar to what Dr. Parekh was talking about, right? That no one particular moment can make or break your life. Let's say you win an Olympic gold medal, right? What are you going to be doing next week? You're going to be back on the ground. You're going to be doing exactly the same thing again. You'll be running on the same track all over again. And what are you going to do if you don't win an Olympic medal? You're going to be back on the ground again next week, and you're going to be training for the next one again. Just because you have won doesn't mean you're going to stop playing. Just because you've lost doesn't mean you're going to stop playing. And that aspect of that training doesn't stop. And if you realize why you're actually playing, and most of the time you'll realize you play because you absolutely love to play. It's what gives you a sense of purpose. It's not the medal, it's the everyday training that you do, it's the everyday play that you do that actually gives you a sense of purpose. And when it comes to sport, what's interesting is that winning and losing is so ingrained in sport that every day you are encountering winning and losing. If you look at a badminton match, for example, right? To win, you need 21 points. But you can also lose 19 points and still become a world champion. That is the part that we don't realize, right? We lose 2 points and we start choking. So, thank you. So the ability to be able to lose those 19 points gracefully, learn from those 19 points and still keep going. Roger Federer has won 53 points in his career, and he is Roger Federer, right? So you can look at it in the microcosm of a single match. You can look at it over a season. You can look at it over life. It's the same principle that would apply.
It's like this, you are told, हमारे ज़माने की बात है, when we were told in 10th बोर्ड पढ़ लो सब ठीक हो जाएगा, right? फिर मत पढ़ना, 11th में नहीं पढ़ना. First major organized lie given to young students like us at that time. अभी तो खैर आपकी उम्र है, right? Then जैसे 11th आया, अब मेडिकल के लिए पढ़ना शुरू कर दो. Then अब बोर्ड एग्जाम लाइफ का सबसे बड़ा एग्जाम है. Nobody told me it's a pointless exam. Pointless, totally pointless. जब हर चीज का एंट्रेंस एग्जाम है तो 12th कितना हुआ, किस बात का बनाया हुआ है? मतलब मुझे बताओ, व्हाट्स द पॉइंट? None of us in our profiles लिखा है दिव्या ने कि in 12th I got X% marks. कॉलेज का नाम लिखा है, स्कूल का नाम लिखा है. So 12th आ गया, एक बार अच्छे से पढ़ लो, मेडिकल हो जाएगा, सब ठीक हो जाएगा. सारा उल्टा हो गया. I entered medical college. My first test was in my first week. 250 में से 3 मार्क्स आए थे मेरे, ठीक है? और मतलब आप ऑल इंडिया एंट्रेंस क्लियर करके आए हो, मतलब यू थिंक दैट यू अराइव्ड इन लाइफ ना, मतलब मेडिकल कॉलेज फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट, मतलब इससे बड़ा क्या हो सकता है? और वहाँ जाके समझ में आया कि 250 लोग हैं, सारे अपने अपने एरिया के टॉपर्स हैं, तो आप पढ़ना शुरू कर दीजिए, नहीं तो आपसे ना हो पाएगा. तो 5.5 साल पढ़ाई में निकल गए. फिर हो गया एग्जाम पास करो, चलो यू पास दैट एग्जाम. नाउ देन व्हाट हैपेंस? इंटर्नशिप एंजॉय कर लेना. कैसे एंजॉय कर लेना? नाइट ड्यूटी आएगी, मॉर्निंग ड्यूटी आएगी, इमरजेंसी आएगी, और जैसे जैसे इंटर्नशिप खत्म होनी होगी फिर ये बोलेंगे अब एंट्रेंस एग्जाम के लिए पढ़ो, पीजी भी तो करना है. फिर जैसे जैसे आप पीजी में घुस जाओ, फिर वो बोलेंगे पढ़ाई करो पर पेशेंट भी देखो. फिर बस 3 साल पढ़ लो, फिर तो पढ़ना ही नहीं है. फिर आप वहाँ से बाहर निकलोगे, then you suddenly realize now you're nobody. आपने एमडी कर लिया, गोल्ड मेडल आ गया, सब कुछ आ गया, now you're nobody, start from zero. फिर आप सारे पेशेंट को देखोगे, सारे ठीक हो रहे होंगे, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं होगी, एक में गड़बड़ हो गई, वो ट्विटर पे लिख देगा, वो फेसबुक पे आ जाएगा, उसका एक गूगल रिव्यू आ जाएगा, फिर आपको हॉस्पिटल आपको फ़ोन करेगा आपने क्या कर दिया, यार जो पिछले 100 पेशेंट ठीक हुए उनका कुछ नहीं करोगे आप बात. सो दैट इज लाइफ. यू विल हैव टू कीप वर्क, दैट्स द लॉन्गिट्यूडनल एक्सेस. कि अभी भी जो अभी आप, नो मैटर व्हाट यू डू, इट डजंट मेक एनी डिफरेंस इन योर लाइफ वेदर आई हैव अ 30-year experience or Divya has a 20-year experience. You've come to me for treatment. If you don't get well, I'm pointless. And if you go to somebody who doesn't have experience, gave you some treatment, it helped you, fantastic. That's life.
So amazing, and your style is particularly so endearing of explaining. So, but having said that, beneath this, all this, you put it in a style that all of us are really liking and engaging with. But beneath the surface, there is a lot of turmoil, all that you were sharing, lot of stress, high stress situations, day on day basis, and quite a bit of what we may say is that burnout likelihood. You've used a wonderful word in your book, choke. So it's easy to choke under pressure, and pressure of performance, pressure of becoming, pressure of succeeding, pressure of not failing even one case. So in the midst of all this, how does developing a champion mindset help to prevent burnout? Please decide who will take.
Divya will answer the complex question. Divya answer. I answer the simple ones, right? But a thought that came to my mind when I was hearing the question is that I think those who, when I am the judge of what I am doing, I'll end up doing a lot better. The moment I make you the judge of what I'm doing, that's when I start making a mess of it. Right? So, here you can look at academics, you can look at your careers when you start working, or some of you who have started working. If you have a 9 to 5 and you're going to 9 to 5 and you're just there because you want to take the box of being there, तो अब उतना ही आएगा आपका growth. Issue is not whether you are doing 8 to 6 or 9 to 5 or 10 to 4. I don't think time matters here. But are you working at a level that makes you feel nice about it? So when you write a book, did you like reading it? You aren't writing it for someone else. You have to like it. So when you are giving an examination, are you liking what you're writing? Which means when you were preparing, were you feeling good about preparing the way you were? The moment the mirror inside us becomes more honest without the filter that you use on some of your social media platforms, right? When your mirror is clear, that's when you will start harnessing who you truly are. And that's growth. Otherwise, you will keep roaming around in the turmoils, turbulations, stresses and burnouts, because everybody will have a view, and आज के ज़माने में तो everybody has a view. तो कितना मुश्किल काम है हैंडल के पीछे जिसमें किसी को नाम भी नहीं पता आपका और आपने जो मर्जी लिख दो, कोई आंसरेबिलिटी अकाउंटेबिलिटी तो है नहीं आपकी.
Dr. Parekh is a very Zen Yoda kind of person. I'm the stressed, anxious one. So reading my own book gives me a little stress. So I told Dr. Parekh he'll do the reading. But when ma'am spoke about the idea of choke and burnout, what's interesting is that a choke is something that happens when we experience short-term stress, right? And if you really think about it, then short-term stress is not a bad thing. It's perfectly normal, natural for all of us to experience some amount of short-term stress. I don't know about Dr. Parekh, but I am even right now. My heart rate is a little bit faster than it would be at any other time. Imagine a person going for an entrance test, someone going for their Olympic tournament, right? It's not possible that you aren't stressed because it is, in some ways, it's going to feel like the most important moment of your life. And that's something called a fight or flight response. Right? You may have all heard that term, fight or flight. But what we don't think is that fight means you're going to actually become stronger to fight with someone. Flight means you're actually going to be able to run faster because you're running away. Your body is preparing you to run away from something. So fight or flight response is actually your body's way of strengthening us. we start getting scared because we think, oh, if I'm stressed, I'm not prepared, there's something wrong with me. We're not able to understand that that's just an energy boost that we're getting. So short term stress is something that we can actually harness to make ourselves stronger, make ourselves more alert, more active. The problem comes is when, so burnout happens when there's chronic stress, right? So when your stress is not a single exam or a single thing, but your stress is, let's say, your boss who's sitting next to you every single day and asking you about deadlines on a daily basis for years on end, right? And you get no respite. That's when that stress is something that turns into burnout. So we need to make sure that stress comes in small bouts, but we're also giving ourselves enough time to be able to recover from that. So what else are we doing in our lives? You're a student, but you can't just be defined by your academics. I'm not a psychologist 24/7 and I do nothing else, right? So what are your other hobbies? What are your other activities? What about your friends, family? How much time are you giving there? So there has to be a little bit of balance so that we're able to counter the pressures that we experience, and then that's how we would distinguish between, let's say, stress and a choke and burnout.
Thank you. Very well put. And in between, you talked of balancing recovery also. So I'll be curious to know from you, what's your advice to the audience and to me also? How do we balance physical recovery and mental recovery? But before that, you put emphasis on the word balance at several places in your book, which is something that resonated a lot with me, and that reminded me of the famous poem of Rudyard Kipling, where he's in a very creative way urged the readers to balance between success experience and the so-called failure experience. With your permission, can I read those two lines for the audience? So this poem, it's a very long poem. Please read it up on Google. You will easily find it. If by Rudyard Kipling. I'll read only three phrases from it. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, read men as humans, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting or being lied about, don't deal in lies. Or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same. So poem is very long. I will not read the whole thing, but the last sentence is beautiful. All these ifs, and then yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you will be a man, my son. So it's really touching and moving and inspiring poem. I hope you read. But bringing it back to the balancing, this is what the essence of this poem is. How do you balance the physical and the mental recovery?
I would say, if you don't proactively try to balance both your physical and your mental self, then your body and mind are going to force you to do it in any case. So if you proactively take care of, let's say, being physically active, vis-a-vis you are not physically active, eventually you will be pushed. There will be some pain, niggle, spasm, something is going to happen where you'll have to do something. Similarly, if you don't take adequate breaks, let's say you are a student and you study, you sleep a couple of hours, you study, you don't take breaks, you don't do outdoor activity, you don't do social stimulation, you can't do well. Because your mind is going to get more and more clogged, more and more clogged. You will need to do the walks. I was recollecting this a couple of days back from my MBBS days actually. The thing that I remember from my third MBBS exam was the late night chai. We would all walk from our hostel, pick up 1122 people. By that time it would become 10, 12 people. That 10-minute walk, irrespective of the weather, standard chai wala giving us a chai, having that cup of tea and coming back, rejuvenating. Because in that break, you were not talking about anything else, and plus, everybody identified with each other because we were all so scared that the exam is coming. So, these aspects need to be given value to. I think social stimulation, which does not mean social media stimulation because that's absolute nonsense. It's just making your brain slower and duller and essentially stupid, right? If you want not to have mental fatigue, get out of the screens a little bit. I was on a flight with Divya and I was so fascinated by some of the stupidities that I saw around me. I just felt like telling some of them that can you please go and have a life. I mean, इतनी मुश्किल से टाइम मिला है बिना फ़ोन के. अब उसमें भी आप फ़ोन खोल के उसके अंदर अगर लूडो खेलने वाले हो मतलब what क्या? Just because you need to switch on that phone and do something on it, you can't possibly playing Ludo that too by yourself for an hour. Go get a life. कुछ मत करो यार, बाहर झांक के देख लो, अभी तो दिन है. Some sunlight देख लो, मतलब पैरीडोलिया ही कर लो, आसमान में कुछ बना लो, कुछ दिख जाएगा. Maybe your past lover, if nothing else. It'll be nice. Better than Ludo. The whole idea is that if you don't give yourself the right kind of stimulation and breaks, it just won't work. If you don't do it, you will have those moments when you're preparing for your studies and now you feel एक blackout सा आ गया है. वो blackout नहीं है, brain कह रहा है सो जाओ, थोड़ा relax कर लो, कुछ और कर लो. Meaningful relationships, physical activity, especially pick a sport. Continue with your creative pursuits in life, arts, poetry, whatever else that comes to your mind. Adequate physical activity, balance this, you will actually do a lot better. So if you were a student studying 16 hours, 15 hours a day, I don't think you'll do well. But if you are studying for let's say about 10, 12 hours a day and the remaining 3 hours you are making sure that your mind stays on top of the game, your body is staying fine, you'll actually do much better. So if you study 45 minutes, take a break for 5-10 minutes and keep doing that, you'll do better as compared to studying for 3 hours at a row. So it's about science है, इसमें कोई बहुत complex नहीं है. So if you understand this conceptually, that your car needs servicing, you're a human being, you need your servicing.
Amazing. So in fact, balance and harmony is the way of the nature. A day has to be followed by night. Waking has to be followed by rest. Everything in nature is trying to balance itself and harmonize itself with other things. Now that brings me back to a little while ago, you were talking of the process and the outcome. So you have written extensively in your book about goals, and in the context of goals contrasted the analogy of destination versus journey and results versus process. Now I think this is time we hear you about this.
So most of us, when we're competing in a tournament, taking an exam, the idea is to get a certain percentage. The idea is to get a gold medal, and that's something that motivates us. That's something that drives us. But if you think about, again, imagine any sport. Imagine a tennis match, right? Have you ever thought, is the scoreboard inside the court or is it outside the court? It's outside the court, right? Is the score changed or announced during the point or after the point? After the point, right? What does focus means? Focus means here and now. If you want to focus on your match, you have to focus within the court and you have to focus while that point is happening, right? If you're thinking about the result, you are there and then, right? You're thinking in the future, you're thinking about what's going to happen outside the court, you're going to be thinking about what everyone else around you is going to say. And a lot of times, rather than actually focusing on the point, you start thinking, oh, if I win this point, then this is going to happen. Or if I lose this point, then this person, my coach is going to say this, or my family is going to say this. What am I going to say? I remember when I used to be playing in school, once or twice when I thought I was going to lose, I started making up excuses in my mind. I was like, maybe I'll tell them my foot was hurting. Maybe I'll tell them, oh, the AC duct was a problem, this, that, the other. So I didn't give myself a chance. Because that result and how to deal with that result was something that was so much more important at that time. And what we don't realize is that we think the result is our biggest motivator, but actually the result is our biggest distractor. So the minute we're able to tune that out, focus a lot more on what it is that we're actually doing in the moment. If you're reading something, just read for the sake of reading it. If you're playing a sport, focus on just whacking that ball. I work with a boxer. I'm like, the only thing you have to focus on is breaking your opponent's nose. Nothing else matters in that moment, right? It's not about the points. Points will come. Points will automatically come. What you have to do is focus on what you're doing, and that's the only way to actually achieve the result that you want to. So yeah, I think that's it's pretty basic as far as it comes to process and results.
Don't break noses, but yeah, that was just a boxer thing. Stop clapping to violence. Yeah.
In fact, that reminded me of who's himself a sports person also. He was a sports coach, I believe, Rob Carver, who wrote the book, famous series, in a game of tennis, in a game of golf, etc. And he put it very beautifully in three simple words, that performance is equal to potential minus interference, like what you were talking about, the distractions. So, talking of performance, but another reality remains, Dibeji, that while the scoreboard is outside the court, so is the audience, so are the evaluators, so are the commentators. They're also sitting outside of the court. And there is something called a performance anxiety that some of us feel all the times, but most of us feel sometimes at least. So, in that context, you've also written off the focusing on the purpose, the process, and the importance of practice. In fact, importance of practice, you've written extensively, almost an entire chapter devoted to that. So I want to hear you on this, the three things of purpose, process, practice in dealing with the performance pressure.
Right. So I think one thing that makes sport very exciting is that practice is a very important part of it. So when it comes to performing arts, if you're a dancer, if you're a musician, if you're an athlete, then practice is very central to your ethos. For a lot of us who are in other fields, somehow that version of practice is not something that we do. We don't actively keep training ourselves for different situations that keep coming. And I think that's something that we can actually learn from people who are in the performing field. But what happens is that we practice, and when we practice, let's say you're practicing for an exam, right? You'll be sitting, you'll be writing your paper. Beach mein your friend will call, you'll pick up the phone. If you can't understand one question, you look at what's happening, what the answer is, how to get that solution. You'll take a break, you'll walk around, you'll come back. So while you're practicing answering that question, you're not necessarily practicing how to deal with the entire environment that's going to be created, that 3-hour high pressure situation where you don't know what the next answer is going to be. Can you get yourself to skip, move forward, things like that. So the way that you perform under pressure and the way that you perform when you're relaxed are actually two different things. In sports, you'll find that your grip changes, your technique changes, your strategy changes, you can become faster, slower, and that has a direct impact. And the same thing also happens if you're a student, if you're doing any other aspect. So for me, an interesting anecdote, something we've written about in the book as well, is a story of Michael Phelps, right? So Michael Phelps decided he was going to win 8 gold medals in one particular Olympics, and he'd won 7 already, and he had another race to go. And he dived in the water, and his goggles filled up with water. Most regular people would choke and panic in that moment and feel like, oh, now game over, now what am I going to do, right? What does Michael Phelps do? He still wins, he still gets a gold medal. What he did was he counted the number of strokes he would take to reach the end and flip back. And how did he do this? This is something he had done because his coach had trained him on all the different high pressure things that could have happened in that moment. So he cracked his glasses also. And he said, you swim blind and then see what you're going to do. Something like that happens. So it's not just about practicing in perfect circumstances, because you would often not going to get those perfect circumstances. But can we also practice and train for all the things that may go wrong? And when we're able to do that, when we're able to put ourselves under that pressure and still learn the strategies to be able to perform under that pressure, I think that's when we'll reach that peak performance, that excellence.
Thank you. And I think like the example that you gave, very powerful example, that practice is not just a wartime strategy. It's not just something that you you get into to deal with a wartime situation like this. But practice, I think, is an everyday phenomenon. It's an everyday thing, and it can help with several simpler things in life. I remember once Gulzar Saab, legendary Gulzar Saab told me that बात तो है पर आप रियाज नहीं करती हैं. And I was stunned. I could never imagine what would riyaz mean in the context of poetry. I just couldn't, figure it out. Why would he say riyaz nahi karti hain? And when I asked him, he said, शब्द मिल गए आपको, अब आपने उन्हें मांझना है, और ये काम रोज का है. So practice is an everyday affair. At the same time, there's something, a recent trend on a different note I wanted to ask you, Dr. Samir. You have talked in the book about something that stress can also mean arousal. Arousal of emotions, which creates a stimulus to do something, which creates motivation to pursue something higher, bigger. But at the same time, these days, what we notice is that very small things tend to trigger people. Trigger has become a very fancy catchphrase. Everybody would say, situation bahut triggering hai, trigger ho jate hain. So how would you help the audience understand the fine nuanced difference between why trigger can be a positive lead, positive arousal needed for positive motivation?
So two things. We are not ammunition, we can't be getting triggered. It's just one of the words we've all picked up and started living with. Every next person comes and says, I get triggered by this, I get triggered by this. I feel like saying, kya kar rahe ho? But at the same time, simple तरह से समझे. I have stress. I have an exam coming in 6 months. Option 1, मुझे फर्क ही नहीं पड़ता. I will not do well. Option 2, मुझे anxiety हो रही है, arousal आ रहा है, stress हो रहा है. I'll start studying now, so that by that time when my exam comes, I'm well prepared, I'm chill, I'm relaxed, and I've studied also. I'll do very well. Option 3, 3 days to go before the exam. I'm totally stressed. I can't sleep. I'm having nausea. I'm throwing up. I'm having my blackouts. I will not do well. Optimum stress, optimum performance. If it doesn't matter, I won't do well. If it gets the better of me and overwhelms me, chokes me, like Divya mentioned, I can't do well. Yerkes-Dodson law, which basically means if I harness my stress and bring out my best, my performance is optimized.
How well put. And I wish we had more time to go on. Your book is a treasure trove, and there's so much to talk about it. My young friend here tells me that we have about 3-4 minutes left. So I would say, as a final word, I would invite you to please talk about a very important thing that you've covered in your book extensively, which is self-talk. Because the maximum amount of chatter that is going on all the time, 24/7, is inside our head. The maximum amount of talk that we do is with ourselves. So if that is the case, then how do we leverage the positive potential of self-talk?
I think when it comes to relationships, the most important relationship we actually have is with ourselves, because that's the one person who's constantly going to be talking to you. And so there are different ways that you can look at self-talk. I'll let Dr. Parekh talk about some of it, but from a focus perspective also, from a performance perspective also, self-talk is something that becomes very interesting. Take for example that I tell you, don't focus on that chair, right? What are you going to do? You're going to start focusing on that chair, right? What I really wanted to say was, listen to me. If I just say, listen to me, focus on me, you would have found it a lot easier. But we take very complicated ways, very complicated instructions, don't do this, don't do that, which is something that doesn't help us, especially in high pressure moments. We need to give ourselves very clear instructions of what we want to do. I remember when I was playing in school, I used to play badminton. And in the moments when I was the most stressed, my coach used to tell me, just relax. And nothing can agitate a stressed person more than someone telling them to just relax, right? There's no connection, there's no support, there's nothing. What I probably needed to hear was, you know what, breathe, calm down, listen to me, this is the strategy you need to use next. And self-talk is actually that coach that is within us, that we carry with us, that will guide us in those moments. So self-talk is something that can be very important for the focus for how we're dealing with high pressure situations, but also very important for our self-confidence, our attitude. Dr. Parekh.
I think most of the time the negative self-talk that happens is actually not you talking to you. It's you letting somebody else get into your head. You hear so much criticism of various kinds, not to just directed towards you, but directed towards others. Which is why I think modern day social media milieu is a bit of a tricky situation now, because negativity is overwhelmingly more than positivity. You may have come across a post where A was talking about B in a very nasty, negative, mean way, and you found anything of there relatable to yourself and it started getting into you. That also becomes a part of the self talk. I think if you want to just, you will have a relationship with the self if it is undiluted, if external vectors are not having an impact on you. So, if you want to truly express yourself, you will need to find the originality. I think somewhere we get lost between showing who we are or expressing who we are vis-a-vis what somebody else wants to see. And in that confusion, we lose our sense of self, the cohesive sense of self, which is what is a problem. At the end of the day, we are a unique individual with unique abilities, unique problems, unique personalities. A will never be like B, B won't be like C. A is neither better nor worse than B. Once you realize this and you are on your own path and not on thinking that there is a path where everybody's on a race, and it's not a racetrack. In this race, you're all by yourself. All you have to do is lap after lap, do your best. That's about it. That's the best you can do.
What an amazing note to close this conversation on. And yes, so rightly put, you know, it's not just inner critic, we also have an inner sage within. It's just that the way human brain, the primal brain, over millions of years was programmed was that it is hypersensitive to threat. So it's not our fault if our brain experiences negative impulses. It's programmed like that. But it will become our fault if we do not self-intervene and we do not take responsibility to correct the situation and make a corrective intervention. And that's why self-talk is so important, conscious self-talk. Thank you so much, Dr. Sameer and Divyaji. I'm sure that this session and the learnings from it are going to stay with all of us for a long time. It will linger long after we will be leaving the festival. And what a wonderful session. Thank you so much.
So I believe ma'am had just talked about that how she was a little nervous. But if I would have been half as cool as her, I would have performed well in boards. And if I had someone like him to tell me that board didn't matter, then I would have been more cool. The greatest battles are invisible, and the bravest victories happen within. This session in one line has taught us exactly that. Can we please have a round of applause again for our wonderful, wonderful speakers? Thank you to all of you for reminding us that strength is a skill we all can cultivate. It's time to call upon Mr. Shubhrata Kumar Dash, a respected individual, to felicitate our speakers for this session.
May we all go forward steadier, wiser, and quietly undefeated. I would request the audience to remain seated as we will be hosting the next session shortly after. Aratrika Chaudhary signing off.
something that we have come across in our life, because love, heartbreak, and letting someone go, whether you love her or not, is something that we can all connect with. So now we're honored to have with us Dr. Milan Vora, one of the most amazing writers on romantic poetry in our country. Along with him, Lalit Kumar sir, professor Delhi University, and one of the renowned name in the Kalinga Literary Fest. So I would like to request them to join the stage and talk about love, heartbreak, and heal people whose heart are broken and want to share something or someone they cannot confess with. Please, sir.
I hope it's working. Am I audible? Well, I am a married man, and 10 years into marriage, you stop worrying about heartbreak. You lose your heart on the way and start worrying about your receding hairline, lungs, kidney, and everything else except the heart. Jokes apart, thank you, KLF. I am delighted and honored to welcome Milan Voraji, whose book Heartbreak Unfiltered is making a splash. Of late, it has been making a splash in the literary world. It has turned out to be immensely popular. We are here to talk about heartbreak. So, welcome, Milanji.
Thank you so much, Lalit.
Milanji, primarily, you have been associated as an author of romance, love, and of course, we all know that since antiquity, love and war have fascinated poets and storytellers alike. There is hardly any society where poets haven't composed poetry about love and war. In fact, while reading your book, I was reminded of the Roman poet Ovid, his first century work, Ars Amatoria, which can be roughly translated into English as Art of Love. And there, Ovid teaches young people how to find a beloved. It's a kind of manual on how to find a lover. For instance, he tells them to go to a public place, sit right next to an attractive person, and strike a conversation. It's a different matter altogether that for writing Ars Amatoria and writing such frivolous stories, he was banished by the then emperor, and he died in banishment. So I feel if Ovid's work, Ars Amatoria, in which he calls himself a technician of Venus, is about finding a lover, your book is about how to overcome heartbreak. If that lover flees, that lover departs. So primarily you have been associated with romance, with the genre of romance. So what led you to explore the theme of heartbreak in literature? What prompted you exactly?
So, I don't know among you all if anybody ever read romance novels. So, my first book was something which even our mothers and our grandmothers grew up reading called Mills and Boons. And I'm the first Indian Mills and Boon author. And I found that the moment I wrote romance, and it was very widely covered, a very successful book. I was on all the big channels and BBC and everything because everybody connects so closely with romance. I think that it's our favorite sort of a escape, right? We know that realistically you sort of think, okay, reality may not be all that, but we escape it into that world in books. But when I wrote it, I found interesting things started happening, Lalitji, and to everybody here. When somebody knows that I've written romance and they would come and start talking to me, especially like when I was going to speak at big colleges, like there were times when I was speaking at a national engineering college, it would be a hall full of, every stream of engineering in there. And, they're all serious about their careers. And when I would leave that room, people would come and then they would start wanting to talk and they would start telling me their own life and love stories. And I was fascinated at, it's not as if love is always that glorious thing, right? The happily ever after which you're seeking is actually just one sort of a punctuation in the story, right? It's the lows which came before. And even after you think you found a happy solution with somebody and you think you found your happy ending, you know that it didn't end over there. The story continues. In life, the story will keep continuing. And I found that a lot of people were sharing these stories with me. And more and more, I started writing, even in romance, I started writing characters who had been emotionally scarred. And I found that readers really connected with that. You didn't want some idealistic sort of a scenario which was impossible. Like even in my last book, which is called Our Song, my heroine Ragini, she's a struggling musician, okay? And even the fact that even heartbreak comes in different ways. Sometimes our parents don't support us. They let us down. Sometimes close friends, you think you have a really close friendship and for no reason that person has just ghosted you. So it's not just even about a romantic relationship, whether it's straight or gay or whatever, but the fact that throughout life we do keep experiencing these kind of shattering emotional experiences. And I think that is what made me more and more decide that I want to write about heartbreak, which is really the other side of love.
That's true. I agree that heartbreak comes in different forms. Now let's talk about your book a little bit, especially your characters, because you have gleaned your characters from different parts of the world in 20 different stories. And you align those stories with practical pieces of advice, just like Ovid. you give practical, concrete pieces of advice on overcoming heartbreak. So would you like to talk about your stories? How did you glean them? How did you come across those characters? How did you create those characters? Because they belong to different gender, male, female, trans. So could you please talk
So,
about them?
first thing I should say is that, when we say characters, we typically think fiction, whereas these are real stories. You'd be amazed that, when you read the stories, you will find parts of yourself in at least one of those stories. Because these are very real people. Like, there is one story which is about a guy who was constantly sitting for entrance exams. And his relationship with a girl who he met initially was a Facebook friend. And at that time, both were dating some other people. And then when it broke up, they both met and then they kind of shared their life experiences and said, oh, really, she was dating somebody who was now what you call a narc and a narcissistic person. And they were both so clear that if we get involved, we don't want to repeat those same patterns. He had a girlfriend who was very controlling. So these are very real people. But when you read the stories, what I found very interesting was, imagine if a friend is telling you, I'm dating this person. And, this guy, you both all understand Hindi and English equally, right? Out here, I think in Bhubaneswar, we're all familiar. So I'll slip between both languages. So, for example, if your friend is going on telling you, this guy, yeah, bar he sets up a date, but then he ditches me at the last minute. Or a guy also can keep saying, like she says she's serious about me, but now she's saying that her parents are also asking her to see guys. Like, I really don't know where I stand. Right? So when we are hearing it, it's so easy for us to guide that person and give advice. Because why? Because we are in an objective place. That person who's in the relationship is deep in it. We are outside and we can spot all the red flags. We can see things which are clearly not adding up. The intent isn't right, even if the chemistry is right, even if physically you all are both good together. But you can make out, is this person's intent there or not? So the thing with the stories, what was amazing is that, in a way, by listening to somebody else's detailed story of that relationship, how they met, how it developed, and then they broke up, and what came after that, you know, it kind of lets you see your relationship through the lens of all the stories that you're reading about. And then the goal was also that, I write about all the aspects of heartbreak so that you can make sense if you have gone through, if anybody in this room or anybody you know has gone through heartbreak. You know, the biggest thing is you're left with a lot of unanswered questions, right? You feel like, why didn't I see it coming? Why couldn't they tell me? What changed? It was so good, and what changed? So when you read a book like this, it kind of helps you make sense of what went wrong.
People always, often they go into that overthinking mode, and then that drives them crazy.
Yeah.
Uh, See, modern love, let's talk about modern love.
Yeah.
And then we'll go back to your stories, of course. Modern love is quite complicated. There was a time when we read John Donne where he writes that parted lovers are like a pair of compasses. एक लवर कहीं जाता है तो दूसरा फिक्स रहता है वापस आएगा ही. Or Shakespearean sonnet where he writes in one of his sonnets called True Love that love is not love that alters when it finds the alteration. But modern love is characterized by all these new terms: gaslighting, toxicity, situationship, ghosting. Even I find myself in a dilemma. I find shocked when I come across these terms. What are your thoughts on modern love?
Interesting that you asked me that, because I just wrote a article for a newspaper this morning about that, on this. So it's very fresh. Um, I feel what is the most fundamental thing any of us wants, right? We are all talking more and more about self-love, right? We are saying we have to learn it through all the education we've had. Nobody taught us to love ourselves, right? So there is a greater and greater importance and need and realization to know that, yes, of course we must love ourselves. If we don't, we are, the energy and everything that we put out in the world is altered by that. But I believe that one of the most fundamental human needs is a need to be loved and to love somebody. And that is not to say that you don't need to love yourself. Self-love is very important. But that very essential thing of knowing that somebody loves you, somebody is bothered about, it's got late. Are you home? Tell me, text me when you reach. the light is on when you come back. You know, even when we're young, it's the parents, if you're lucky, if you have caring parents, you know, that need that somebody cares about me. You know, if I'm stuck on the road, where are you? What happened? And the fact that you're also involved and care for somebody, that very fundamental need to love and be loved, I think has not changed ever since, you know, humanity probably began. You know, from the time we were living in caves. And the other thing, you know, Lalit, I realized is that, you know, we beat ourselves up when we say, you know, why do I keep falling for the wrong person again? I don't know why I keep on repeating these mistakes. I mean, why on earth do I even fall in love? And I found that there is a lot of research which actually proves that even this whole thing of falling in love is actually a part of evolution. You know, there is research by Helen and Fisher which was done centuries ago, and it says that when we were cavemen and cave women, the fact that, you know, we needed to even be attracted to another person was essential. So it was kind of like it's there in the neurons in our brain that there has to be this firing of certain chemicals which is going to attract us to somebody, which is going to lead to us mating, which is going to lead to a continuation of our species. And so that is hardwired in our brain. So, you know, on one level I would say we should not be beating ourselves up and saying like, why on earth did I fall in love? Ya matlab kya pada tha mujhe, right? But that is part of the way we are wired. But the fact that we repeat certain patterns, we seem to keep making the same mistakes, we are doing that, is something that the book helps you become more aware of and say, why is that happening to me again and again? And I'll tell you, Nalini, if I may just continue, you know, very interesting thing. At one time, I just moved cities and I was, you know, going through a lot of grief. And I've always believed that you must seek out, you know, professional help. If you're going through a depression, if you're going through any kind of, you know, grief and whatever, seek out professional help. And I laugh and I say that in the book also, when I say in the old days, they used to say, you know, you got to kiss a lot of frogs before you can find your prince. So I say that you should actually, like, you know, when you say kiss a lot of frogs, actually go out and like consider meeting therapists as that. Even if your first one doesn't work out, go meet the next one and meet the next one till you know that this is the right one for me. And so even I, when at one time I was dealing with grief and I had lost my parent, and you know, we were talking about things back and forth. And when I spoke to this lady, this counselor, and she again brought up some childhood thing, and I got annoyed with her, and I said, why do you keep going back to the childhood? And she said, just hear me out. And the fact is that almost every single thing that we are dealing with, especially like in the context of heartbreak, it can actually be traced with patterns and needs and lacks that we felt when we were young, especially if you were denied or deprived of love by a primary caregiver in our lives. So, you know, we end up then trying to sort of find coping mechanisms which are repeated then into our romantic relationships.
These are important thoughts. I'm so glad that you talked about self-care, you talked about mental health, because unfortunately, conventionally, we have been taught since our childhood something that literature, movies, and everything reinforces the notion that in love you need to sacrifice yourself. मर मिटने का नाम ही प्यार है. ये जो idea, this idea is so deeply ingrained that we are not taught the importance of self-care, something about which you discuss at length in your book. I'm so glad you did that. Sometimes I feel, Milanji, that a lover has a paradox. Paradox in the sense that at times we tend to romanticize the person we fall in love with so much that we forget the cliched expression that familiarity breeds contempt. So whoever is in love for the first time or second time deifies the person so much, deified their beloved or lover so much that they forget this maxim, and that eventually leads to debacle, the huge gap between the ideal and the real. Do you feel so?
Well, I think that, you know, the two things are not connected. The fact that there has to be self-love, the fact that you need to respect yourself, the fact that, you know, a lot of terms that we're hearing more about now, boundaries and so on, those are essential. And now there is more awareness of it, you know, and thank God for that. But I think that the understanding of why a relationship went bad, or why it broke up, you know, most people don't talk about it because of the fact that there's a lot of, especially romantic relationships, right? Or even a close friendship, or let's say a relationship in a company that you worked with, and suddenly somebody let you down, and you don't have answers for it. So we are so conditioned to saying you've got consumed by your own shame, humiliation. You feel ke I went about it wrong. I must have done something. You want to keep trying to undo it. You want to, you go lower and lower sometimes, in terms of even your own self-esteem, right? How many people have made these drunk calls, drunk texts to their ex, right? That's because you're sort of still trying to fix it versus trying to first understand, was this even something that you should be placing on yourself? Should it be something that, was it something where you were projecting certain emotions because those needs weren't fulfilled? And you were now putting it all onto that romantic partner, which is an unfair sort of a expectation to put on anybody. Or was that person also, so I think what the book does, was that person also somebody who you couldn't have worked with that relationship. So that whole business of giving yourself guilt, going through that humiliation, going through the shame, and particularly with heartbreak, what happens is, because people internalize it so much, it's not talked about. And one of the goals for me with this book was to at least make sure that I leave people in a room, in an audience, saying that, okay, let me just speak to somebody about it. Don't give yourself so much grief that it's not being brought out and talked about. And read the book, read other materials that you come across as well, to try and understand what you could have changed and what you could not have changed. For instance, if your partner was a narcissist, you know it is going to be far more difficult for you to deal with a narcissist. And you may have situations where we have also had parents or siblings and so on, or spouses or girlfriends and boyfriends who are of a narcissistic type personality. Now, what can you do and what can't you do in that circumstance? You have to be able to read enough and learn enough and navigate. And all of this, if you don't, is what keeps also adding to repeated heartbreaks, which makes it worse and worse.
One of the things that I admire about your book is the way you excoriate, the way you bash cliched expression or sugar-coated expression, sugar-coated advice that everyone offers you when you are undergoing heartbreak. For instance, someone will approach you and say, "This too shall pass. खुद से प्यार करो. ये एक phase है, निकल जाएगा. वक्त है, गुजर जाएगा. Time will heal everything." And I really like the way you have just criticized such approach.
Yeah.
So such approaches, do you think, do not help?
Totally, they annoy you, right? If somebody comes and says ke no, get out of your head, and matlab these are platitudes, right? उस जने को पता ही नहीं आपके ऊपर क्या बीत रही है. वो कौन होते हैं आपको advice देने को? So somebody is coming and telling you time heals everything. That's rubbish. It is bullshit. So you should be able to, in your head, know that, no, okay, I mean, you don't have to confront them, but you also have to know that what you're going through is very real. And that's one of the things which I also cover in the book, which is that when a person is going through heartbreak, it actually physiologically affects your body. There are the stories that you'll read in the book, you will realize that there is somebody who talked about developing IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome. But then heartbreak can actually mimic a real, like a heart condition. And there are even cases of people, very rare cases of people actually dying of heartbreak. Now that's very rare, but the fact that it can affect your sleep, it can affect your appetite, it can either make you very hungry or not hungry, it can make you sleep a lot or make you not sleep, it can affect your moods. So all of these are very real, and so anybody who is telling me, ab chalo chodo na, ab ho gaya, time ho gaya, or people will try and tell you, things like people even have formula, like saying, okay, you were dating that person for 2 years, so how long should you be sitting and grieving this relationship? They'll tell you, okay, 1 month per year. Kahan se aaya ye formula? So this is all just people giving you stuff which is unscientific, and it's important to kind of go through something, speak to people, definitely speak to experts, and read a book like this, which is kind of telling it to you in a very in a very real way. I mean, my whole objective was to talk to somebody the way a friend would, let's say an informed friend would, you know, where sometimes that friend needs to be gentle with you, sometimes the friend needs to shake you up, sometimes the friend needs to make you laugh and say, "Matlab, who are we crying over?" And there are exercises in the book where I will tell you to sit down and write adjectives and say, okay, let's just describe this person who you're feeling so miserable about. ना सो नहीं पा रहे हो आप और बार बार what happens is that very often we're all such kind people, right, that we forget the bad parts of that person. We're only remembering the good. And we're remembering, oh, that guy was, you know, or that girl, you know, the way she used to bring me such thoughtful gifts. You know, like I love to go for cricket matches and she bought me a ticket for that match. Or you'll say that, you know, no, he always knew, you know, what kind of colors I like, and he would. So there are sections in the book which will explain to you that there is something called love languages. Now, a person may be an expert at giving you the love language which you need, right? It still does not necessarily tell you, does that love language add up to intent? No. And yes. You find that out by reading the stories. There are many examples, and I'll keep cross-relating examples from the stories into the chapters in the book. So, for example, there is one story of this girl. It's called Sapota Sadness. And she, like in India, you know, so many people have a color complex, right? And she was always kind of made to feel not beautiful because she was of a darker skin color. Completely unfair. But it was one of her issues through life. And there was a guy who she was dating who was narcissistic guy, and he used to keep on calling her Sapota, which is a chiku, you know. And it would kind of always, you know, it would always kind of trigger her even more. And she would keep saying, I have such a nice name, why don't you use my name? Why do you keep calling me this Sapota? And then when she gets involved with another guy, he knew these vulnerabilities. That guy knew how to say the right words. So when you look at the chapter on love languages, and one of them is words of affirmation, the guy knew that she loves this. So she talks about the time for some time they started living together, and she would wake up and then she would see him looking at her, and she would get all happy and she'd say, what? Like, what are you looking at? And he said, no, I mean, you're just so beautiful. I'm just looking at you. And he was giving her those words of affirmation that she so desperately wanted, right? But at the end of the day, that guy decides to go and marry somebody who his parents decided on, and all that actually counted for nothing. So I think it's important to know how to be able to read some of these things also, and that's where the chapters and the real stories in the book both should be, you know, added up together and read.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we come to your story, I mean, we have some young men and women in the audience. Just imagine that someone approaches you as a counselor. Someone is undergoing heartbreak. What would be your advice? How to overcome heartbreak? It's hard to find a person who hasn't loved and lost, who hasn't loved and undergone heartbreak. वो जो गौतम बुद्ध की कहानी है ना, कि बुद्ध के पास आते हैं, एक महिला आती है कि मेरे बेटे की डेथ हो गई है, तो आप उसे जीवित कर दो। बुद्ध कहते हैं आप सरसों उस घर से ले आओ जहाँ किसी की मृत्यु नहीं हो। वो स्टोरी हार्ट ब्रेक पे भी अप्लाई होता है। किसी भी घर में शायद ही कोई ऐसा मिले जिसने प्यार नहीं किया हो, हार्ट ब्रेक नहीं किया हो, जिसका हुआ हो। तो कोई आपके पास कॉन्क्रीट एडवाइस लेने आता है तो आप क्या कहेंगे? किसी ऑडियंस में से ही कोई पूछता है हाउ टू ओवरकम हार्ट ब्रेक, क्या किया जाए?
It's a very sweeping you know, thing, because it's different for each person. But yeah, yeah. The first thing I'll say is that, you know, when we think that person broke my heart, आपने power दिया ना, we gave power to that person. We gave our love, we gave it so generously, we gave it so trustingly to somebody, right? वो power दे दिया हमने, पर वो power किसका था? That power was ours. So that person cannot take away something which was yours. So first thing to remember is that you could give it because it was yours. So similarly, you're the person who has the power to take it back. And the second thing is, I would say that even if you look at anything from the beginning of time, you look at the best lyrics that are there, you look at the best art that is there, I mean, where would music industry be without songs about love and about songs about heartbreak? Both sides of the coin, right? If you look at almost every song, you can put it into those two groups. इसको love में डाल दो, उसके ज़्यादा, even if you look at patriotism, वो भी love में आ जाएगा, right? So these are things which are fuel for creativity. So I would tell that person that this is extremely powerful raw energy in you right now. So please don't waste that energy. Don't worry about कि मैं इसको, supposing you're writing a book. Don't worry about am I going to publish that book. If you're drawing a painting about that beloved of yours, don't worry about कि उसके बाद में क्या करेंगे. Right now, channel that energy. There are people very often who come to me even to ask about how can I get published and I want to write a book and so on. So I say, वो publishing का बाद में आओ, पहले लिखो. Use that energy because it is so powerful. And if you think मैं बाद में लिखूंगी, बाद में लिखूंगा, after 5 years, that energy has changed. Use that energy very well. I'm going to give you an example which I love, which is in my book. And it's the story of a guy I came across, and he runs a little chai shop in Patna. It is called Bewafa Chai Wala. Okay. And what is Bewafa Chai Wala? He was 18 years old when his sweetheart, who was also 18 years old, dumped him. Okay. And 18 mein to it really hurts, right? Must have been pehla pyar, maybe second, God knows. And he could have said, jaise Devdas tha, usne kya kara? He drowned his sorrows in booze, right? He could have said, my darling used to love chai, let me also just go on drinking chai uski yaad mein. Instead, he started a tea stall, just a thele wala tea stall, and called it Bewafa Chai Wala. So if you have had dhoka and pyar, you can come and get a cup of tea for $10. And if you say, you know, we're a couple, we're happy, or my heart is still whole, it's not been broken, whole as in WHOLE, and it's not been broken, and I'm willing to pay the $15 because I'm still proud that I'm in love or whatever. And here is somebody who says, I've had betrayal in love. And they come there, and he now sells 1,000 cups of tea a day into midnight, up to midnight. This is in Patna, it's a real story I'm telling you. And somebody even asked him, I googled him on YouTube, and somebody even asked him and says, क्या आप ऐसे तो नहीं है कि आपके साथ ही कोई धोखा कर रहा है just to get a cheaper cup of tea? And he says, no. When people come there and they stand there beside my stall, you know, there is a solidarity. Sometimes they just come there, stand there, they're having a cup of tea and you're beside somebody. It's a shared experience. And sometimes they talk about it, sometimes they don't. And what I found most beautiful in this was that, you know, when you say when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, right? In his case, when he had this experience, he didn't let it break him. He decided to do something with it. And you look at other examples, like which are in the book, like Priyanka, Live Love Life, Deepika Padukone. Okay, now her breakup was a pretty public breakup. Most people knew that she was dating this guy. Most people knew it had broken up. It was all whatever it is, gossip or hearsay. But can you imagine that person having a breakup on such a public sort of a stage? And then her mothers then saw the signs of depression in her, got her help, and she kept her head high. And then she has gone on to create a great body of work. She has even acted with the person who was the ex, and she went on to see there is a need in India for mental health, and then went on to start the Live Love Laugh Foundation. So to anybody, to answer your very long answer I gave, Lalit, but to answer the question of if somebody is going through heartbreak, first of all decide who is that person to break me. I'm going to first of all use my energy, whether it is anger, whether it is sadness, put it into some project, you know. And you will find a lot of examples in the book which are real, which are from India, which are from the world, which will leave you feeling motivated.
Oh, that's such a concrete piece of advice that you have given to our younger generation. And I do agree that there is a direct relationship between heartbreak and creativity. No wonder many people have talked about this. And no wonder I'm reminded of John Keats, the English poet, when he was undergoing heartbreak on account of his brother's death. several ailments and of course the problems that he was having with his girlfriend back then, he ended up writing Ode to a Nightingale. The opening line, the famous line, "My heart aches and a drowsy numbness pains."
I know, such
Drow-
beautiful lines. Yeah.
Drowsy numbness.
I must compliment you on all the lovely examples you're bringing up here.
Or we think of Bhartrihari, what he did when he underwent heartbreak. Of course, there is a direct relation between these two concepts. We would have gone on and on. It's such a fascinating topic, but time doesn't permit us. So very quickly, I would request you
And I'll
to
give
read
one
some
more, I'll
lines.
give one more example. You know, I'm sure there are a lot of Taylor Swift fans out here.
Please give this example and read half a page from
Yeah.
your book for
You know,
the
look
audience.
at so many musicians. You look at Katy Perry, look at Taylor Swift, look at Billy Joel. Taylor Swift, after or look at Adele. Her first album, 18, came out of such nasty breakups, and she used that to write the lyrics and became the success she is because of that. Billy Joel went before he became Billy Joel. He was Billy, and he fell in love with his best friend and bandmate's wife. Acha, people in heartbreak think nothing can be worse than my story. My heartbreak is the worst. Right? There is no such thing as your heartbreak is the worst because everybody's got all sorts of situations. So then Billy Joel goes and tells that best friend and bandmate and says, "I'm in love with your wife," and the wife was also in love with him. It was a very complicated situation. And then the bandmate leaves him, he loses his best friend, he loses his band, and that woman walks away, Elizabeth. And then he went through a very major slump and went into depression. He even tried taking his life. He failed at that and he said, "What kind of a loser am I that I can't even do this properly?" And then he went on to write the best lyrics of his life, which made him Billy Joel. Till then, let's say he was Billy. You know, so again and again I say that, you know, look at Taylor Swift. She, after all those bad relationships, she's bought back the rights to her music. She changed how the music industry works. So that's not just about heartbreak, but it's actually about empowerment, you know, which is examples for us, which are real examples in our day and age. So I'll read something.
Yes,
Yeah.
please read something quickly because I have got instructions from the anchor to wind it up. Yes. The advice of young men shouldn't go unheeded. Yes, quickly we can do that.
Okay, because I'll just give you a context which is right from the beginning of the book, okay? So much in life sets us up for the highs of love. The movies, books, good relationships around us all fire up our imagination and become our goals. When love appears, we fall headlong into it. And it can be so heady, that instant thrill, that hanging on edge feeling of love, because it feels so right, so good. The way your heart hammers when your phone pings and you just know it is him or her. Of course you do, because you set a special message tone on your phone just for this person. How magical it feels when the phone goes ting with that beautiful sound, obliterating every thought in your head till you've seen their latest text. Anything they say, any forward they send, just a link to a song, anything, even an emoticon in response to your last message tells you so much more than the content of that text. It tells you this special person is thinking of you. Their wit, witty or not, makes you smile. And God help that friend who dares to tell you that your darling isn't as sparkling as you claim. Your heart, that very same heart that you thought was incapable of looking past that annoying qualities of the every person you met, has decided to embrace this one person in a completely unquestioning way. You marvel at the beauty of every line of their body, the shape of their fingers, the utter edibility of their ears, the timbre of their voice, the thrill of remembering the last time you met, the heightened awareness of sitting next to each other at a movie, at a cafe, your legs pressed together. So grateful for this moment with this person, and nothing could feel righter until it goes wrong. Because nothing, absolutely nothing, prepares us for the low when love ends inexplicably. Why is it that you never saw it coming? How could you not have had any inkling at all? How? When did it change? What did you do wrong? What could you have done to stop it? There was nothing, not the slightest hint that this would be the last time for both of you. it is over. Your heart knows it, yet it refuses to believe it. If any of this rings true, then it's not a coincidence that you, all of you in the audience today, are here at this point in time with me listening to this section. You know me as a romance writer. You know love isn't all, I know that love isn't all rainbows and sunshine. And that's why I like to write about real people. And it's about people who overcome their issues despite everything. The despite everything is the important difference. Despite losing your ability to trust another person again. So it's for you to take this book and say, I need to make sense of what happened, because as I said, there are all these unanswered questions that you're left with. And the first thing is to try and make sense, because somewhere our mind is looking for closure which we didn't get. Our mind is looking for answers. And when you make sense first on a logical level, then it's a way to say, okay, now let me be able to at least start. In a way, it's a lot like the 5 stages of grief. You say, okay, now at least let me start processing it on an emotional level.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for reading out that passage, interesting passage. We have one question, quick question, pointed question, just one at least.
No, but first love is important to everybody, and first everything is important, right? Your first job, your first bonus, your first everything. So the first love is literally when you open your heart, right? You've opened up that heart. Till then, that heart which was it was whatever, we have some sort of cocoon of family love, and even if it, let's say somebody was unfortunate, you didn't have parents or you had one parent and all those situations, but we still have some sort of safety net, some cocoon. And when we get into our first relationship, you just made yourself very vulnerable. And so because of the fact that it's literally just like, when that ends, that wound is a major wound, because you made yourself so raw, so vulnerable. And there will perhaps sometimes be other ones also which are going to hurt you, but that becomes sort of, in your head you look at it as, this is my lesson not to trust again, this is my lesson not to believe again. And I think that's why it's important to make sense of uh, what actually happened in that relationship.
For detailed advice, you can meet ma'am outside
Yeah.
over a counseling session and read her book. That's more important.
So please look for the book. I really
No,
appreciate
we
it.
won't mind. Even if it's a personal question, do not be shy.
No, but I
It's natural
appreciate
to
your
fall in love.
I appreciate you asking the question, because the person who stands up and does this, you're actually doing a service to everybody in the room, right? Somebody may have thought it, but they may have felt shy about asking it. So I really thank you for that. Yeah. And this is a book. If it's available upstairs, you can go and get it. And if it's not, it's available on Amazon. You'll get it within a day. And please be in touch. I'm on Instagram as @Milan Vora. Milan Vora. So we can always continue the conversation on DM as well. Yeah.
Thank you for
Bye.
that
Thank you so
fascinating
much.
discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lalit. And I would like to thank anybody who's here. If not, then later from Kalinga. Thank you so much for having me. It's really always been a pleasure to come here. I love the city and I love this festival and the people. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir, for this amazing sessions. This is saying right, heartbreak doesn't mean the loss of love. It does mean that your love was true. So now I would like to request Dr. Neena Burma, ma'am, to come here and felicitate our guest.
session would be beginning right away, so please be seated. Okay, so very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your host for the evening, Navdeep, and I'll be taking forward with this session. And I would like to extend my warmest welcome to all of you guys. Thank you so much. And our next session is titled "Trust Me, I Won't Leave You." A phrase that carries within it the hope, uncertainty, and emotional courage that lies at the heart of human relationship. Gestures towards questions of belonging, commitment, and the fragile contracts we make with one another in life and in love. We are delighted to welcome Vaishali Hamlai, whose writing explores the inner landscapes of relationship memory and emotional truth with remarkable sensitivity and depth. She will be in conversation with Lalit Kumar, an astute moderator and interviewer known for guiding conversation with clarity, empathy, and thoughtful precision. Together, we will be reflecting on what it means to stay, to trust, and to negotiate the complex emotional architect to our lives. On that note, please join me in welcoming Vaishali Hamlai and Lalit Kumar. Can we have a big round of applause for them? Yeah, you can continue with the session.
Thank you. Thank you, Vaishali ji, and welcome once again. Uh, I am delighted to have with us Vaishali Hamlai ji, whose book Trust Me, I Won't Leave is a moving account of an abusive relationship. The book focuses on the themes of gender discrimination, domestic violence, mental health, and a young girl Mira's quest for empowerment and identity, self-identity. In fact, in India, in the 1920s, since the 1920s onwards, what we call the women's question were taken up a variety of authors in Hindi and other Indian languages, such as Premchand, Sharat Chandra and Rabindranath Tagore in Bengali, Appa Rao in Telugu, Fakir Mohan Senapati in Oriya, Harimohan Jha in Maithili. All these authors responded to the problems of women and their sufferings, the issue of domestic violence, dowry deaths, bride price, what is known as Kanya Shulkam, ill-matched marriage, lack of education. So that trend started. In fact, since I'm in Orissa and I belong to Mithila, I would like to share an anecdote very briefly with you. Harimohan Jha is one of my most favorite authors. He wrote in Maithili in the 1930s. His classic Kanyadan turned out to be immensely popular in the 1930s. The novel deals with the theme of female empowerment, women's empowerment. So when he was a student of English literature in Patna University, he was surprised to see that in the entire university in 1928, there was only one girl. And to his surprise, the girl turned out to be from Orissa. And back then he decided to bring out a novel like Kanyadan, which will empower women to educate themselves. So all these problems that women suffered from in the 1920s, most of them have continued even today. They have resonated with contemporary audience. They continue to resonate with contemporary audience. And I would like to place Trust Me, I Won't Leave in that tradition. You have in fact carried forward that tradition. So before I come to the novel, I would request you, Vaishali ji, to talk about your journey as an author.
Well, if you had asked me 20 years back, I wouldn't have known that I'm going to be writing books. I did a very traditional education. I did my master's in human resource. I was working in Bombay. Then I moved, and because of not being in the very, very bustling city, I had a lot of time at hand. And when I was in Bombay, I used to work and I used to travel by the local train like what everybody does. There was this one specific, like if you know people from Bombay, there's a specific train you take, which is a local of 9:20 and return of whatever time. So there was a train I used to travel by, and I had literally made friends on the route. And I heard that there was a blast in that particular train compartment when I was not there, and that's what it just reminisced so many things, so many memories. I started thinking about the people and what happened, and I started following news, and I really didn't know how to how to express it. So I just started writing about it, that how is it that we can probably make things better and make it better for everybody. That was the time when I started writing. That's how I just wrote, not with an intention of writing a book. I just wrote with the intention of expressing myself, and I think it was the best way to start writing, because there was no backstory to it. There was no intention of having it published. It was all about just because I wanted to express myself. That's when I started writing my first book in 2007, which got launched. So after I wrote, I'm like, oh, this looks like a book. Maybe I could have it published. So I had it published, and since then I've had 6 books. And trust me, it's my 5th book, and I'm particularly proud about it because of its storyline.
I know you're a prolific author, and I do agree that writing has therapeutic value. It heals you. Uh, Now let's move on to your novel. Let's move on to the title of the novel. Trust me, I won't leave. So before I request you to talk about the title, to reflect upon the title, I would like you to share the plot of the novel. What is the novel all about? Of course, I got to know that it's about Meera, a young girl who works in a call center, and then she gets trapped into an abusive relationship. She gets married to a narcissistic husband, and eventually she overcomes it. But would you like to share the plot in detail with the audience?
Yeah, it's pretty much that. It's She gets into a relationship with a narcissist. Over here, what I'm really trying to show is that it's very hard to identify narcissism, because there's a very thin line between possessiveness and narcissism, and a lot of people start believing, a lot of girls who are blind in love, they start thinking that possessiveness is just possessiveness because he loves me, he cares about me, and he thinks about me, and that is why, he's behaving in a particular way. But when it crosses a particular line, it becomes narcissism, where the girl starts changing herself because of being accepted in a relationship. So this is a very, very average girl who's working, has great confidence in her own self, living her life on her own, um, and she meets somebody who actually showers so much love to her, shows so much appreciation towards her, that she starts changing herself for him, which she doesn't really think it as changes. She thinks it as just acceptance in love, that this is how I'm supposed to do. This is how it's supposed to be in love. But slowly and gradually, when she after she's married, the first time when he physically abuses her is when she thought that maybe this is not acceptable, but she still continued doing it. In the whole ordeal, she lost her confidence. She stopped working. She stopped believing in her own self, and she became fully dependent on the partner. And which is where "Trust me, I won't leave" comes, because he says, "Trust me, I won't leave because you are absolutely dependent on me. The source of your life is me, and hence why should I leave? Because it gives me an ego boost that anybody else cannot give me."
Yeah, so true. I mean, when Meera is trapped into that abusive marriage, she finds an unexpected ally in her mother-in-law, which is a rare thing to see in day-to-day life, because usually mothers-in-law side with their sons and barely supports the daughter-in-law. She is a unique character, a powerful woman who in fact persuades her to come out of that relationship. What would you like to tell us about her character? Mother-in-law, the bond
I
between
personally
mother-in-law and
don't
daughter-in-law.
believe that. I know it's a accepted norm that yes, mother-in-law is usually not accepting to the daughter-in-law, but I don't believe it. I feel if you see resemblance of yourself in your daughter-in-law, it's very easy. Like, which in the story, she saw resemblances of herself. She saw resemblances of occurrences which happened to her in her marriage, and now she's seeing her going through it with her with her son. So it was I don't think it was about the mother-in-law and father-in-law. It was more about a women to a women relationship, which is what clicked over there, and which is what made her mother-in-law actually tell her explicitly that you really need to watch about how you're going about with your life, because you're literally you're just doing things which are out of your character.
But eventually, despite suffering a great deal, how does Meera overcome? How does she manage to regain herself, her confidence, and how does she complete her quest for self identity? How does she empower herself towards the end?
So I think there was in the story there was a lot of self-awareness that she went through. It started off with her mother-in-law when her mother-in-law pointed it out to her. As I said, first it was the physical abuse. Then her mother-in-law came to visit them, and she pointed it out to her that she is actually changing herself. And there was a part in the story where he had gone on a business trip or whatever, which is where she started feeling good about him not being around. That itself made her realize that she's going down. There was a part where so because you have small dreams, you have dreams like which are very very ordinary, and for her it was a great achievement when she got her driving license, and she had a car, second hand car, and she felt freedom with that. There was a point when she had to give up that driving because she didn't have that confidence in herself. I think all these things together just made her realize that there's something which is not working out for her. She also sought help from a therapist in the story. So she did a lot of things for her own self to help her own self. She also had a very close confidant or friend who kept telling her repetitively that you are changing as a person and you really need to do that because these are signs, absolute red flags.
I think many modern readers, especially modern women who are struggling in their marriage, they will be able to empathize with the movie account that you have given of Mira. And writers, as I mentioned at the outset of this talk, writers have contributed to the movement aimed at eradicating evils being perpetrated against women. Did it ever occur to you that by writing a book like this, you will be unconsciously or consciously, you will be empowering some women, you will be driving them, propelling them into action, into taking control of their lives?
Actually, yeah, the reason I wrote this book, I mean, how it actually happened is during COVID time, a lot of people were stuck in their houses, and there were a lot of reports of domestic abuse that were coming up, and there were helplines for women who were actually going through domestic abuse of their husbands being at home and not being at work. As they're out there as NGOs helping out. So that's when the whole story did come out for me. I mean, that's how I thought of it.
One of the points that your novel, in fact, raises is the issue of mental health. And of late, I mean, for the last a decade or more, we have started discussing mental health at length, even in colleges and institutions. How important it is for you?
I have also written a book on mental health. It's called Mind Trap.
So could you please share
Yeah,
about it
that
with the
book
audience?
is clearly about ways and means and steps, literally steps, on what are the things that you can first help for your own self by trying to, work on your own self and like listening to music, going for a walk. But these are very surface level things. Then you really need to seek a therapist. You need to seek medical advice and things like that. So in this book, she has sought help from a therapist. She goes regularly to a therapist, and the therapist has helped her just internalize whatever is going on with her, helped her realize that what's happening is not right and it's not normal, and she should not normalize it in her life, which unfortunately a lot of people have normalized in their own life.
Has been normalized so much that earlier no one even bothered about mental health. No one discussed this at all. Now all these institutions have started hiring counselors. Even teachers are asked to discuss problems with students and counsel them. So it's a good development, and it's a recent development, of course.
Yeah, now at a very early age, kids are taught what is right, what is not right,
Yes.
what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, what is okay, what's not okay. But I feel there is some level of limitation that some has within themselves, which makes them seek something which is there with somebody else. And in that moment of vulnerability is when anybody can slip. It's not, it's slipping is not the problem. It's about catching yourself and realizing that you have been caught unaware and you have been vulnerable, and you need to work towards it, because it comes down to your self-worth. It comes down to your own self-confidence. It comes down to your being as a person.
Another thing I wanted you to talk about briefly, which is the use of the term narcissism in the context of the novel. Several reviews of your book, in fact, mention that the protagonist of your novel, Meera, is married to Karan, who is narcissistic by nature. Now, what happens in the bedroom of a husband and wife is a very personal thing. At times, it's very difficult to cast any of the spouses as villain or angel. No one is a villain or an angel. And both the spouses may accuse each other of being narcissistic. It may happen actually, it always happens, and that leads to fights, prolonged fights, and embitterment. So, how do you define the term narcissism in the context of the novel? Because Narcissus, as I know as a student of literature, was a character who comes from Greek myths. He was in love with his self, and then he fell in love with his own shadow. Many girls, many men and women both approached him. He turned down their offer, and then he fell in love with his own shadow. But in what ways do you use the term narcissism in the context of your novel? What are the traits that you associate narcissism with?
I feel that in this novel itself, what the way I have portrayed a narcissist is somebody who takes you away from your own self. So he has taken her away from her real being, not for making her better, but for making her worse than what she was, and putting her lower, making her feel inferior, making her feel not confident enough. Somebody who's not not helping you get up there and helping you get down. That's where a narcissist is. Of course, clearly there is physical abuse that has happened over here in a few cases, but more so it's about the emotional dilemma, is the emotional torture that she has gone through, and how it has made her self-worth low is how I have defined narcissism over here. Narcissism can be defined in very, very different terms. Like a narcissist can be a narcissist to somebody and not to somebody else. It's almost like they catch up their prey, you know. So they know exactly how much to bend somebody, to what extent, and that's when they work on it. A narcissist could be perfectly normal to somebody who is not willing to bend or not willing to give away the self-worth. So
You have studied human resource management. So you know how to manage yourself, oneself, of course. And you also talked about how in marriages, especially in your novel, how Mira's individual self is shattered. So what would be your advice as a scholar of human resource management to young women or men for that matter who get into marriage? How can they preserve their individuality, their identity, and not get shattered by an abusive relationship? What are the precautions that they should take? If someone is watching us and wants to know your advice as a counselor,
any women should be, number one, financially
or man
independent.
for that matter.
Any women, okay, man or women should be financially independent and emotionally independent. You cannot you cannot expect your happiness from somebody else. Your happiness comes from within. You have to create it, and somebody else also does it for you. That's great, but there has to be not that level of dependency where you feel that my whole soul, my whole world, and everything is dependent on this one particular person. I think that's what gives a lot of power to the other person, or maybe it just makes the other person also take you for granted.
Thank you. Sometimes I do feel you may disagree with me, but as a teacher, as a student of literature, since we teach feminism, and there is a joke at Delhi University, in Delhi University circles, that the way a doctor conducts ECG test on heart patients, a Delhi University teacher conducts CCG test on the textbooks that they teach. CCG is an acronym for class, caste, and gender. Whatever we teach, gender, of course, inevitably comes into. Okay, sorry. So I have been asked to wind up this session. So sometimes I feel that instead of using the word independent, why can't we simply focus on educating women, empowering women? Because I feel, I mean, as I said, you may disagree, that none of us, whether male, female, irrespective of our gender, none of us in society is independent in true sense. We are the sum total of ties and bonds that we share with other people. I am dependent on many people. My life will be useless without my friends, my parents, my wife, my daughter. All of them play an instrumental part. So the moment we start asserting our identity, I feel that it may lead to friction. I mean, I don't know, you may disagree, but why do we insist on the word independent so much? Are we truly independent? Can anyone claim to be independent for that matter?
I think it's to secure your own self. It's to make yourself believe that sure, we are dependent on anybody. We live in a family, we live in a society. Everybody is correlated, interconnected. But there has to be a part that if that particular thing doesn't exist, it shouldn't crumble the person. Of course, it will distress them, but not crumble them to extent where they forget their own identity. I feel like my mother's generation or the generation before that, they they never even identified their own identity because for them their identity was only their family. So it's about understanding your identity, securing it, preserving it, and also being dependent on others, but being independent of their own needs, of your needs.
That's so true. Would you like to make some concluding remark for the audience about the book?
I would love you guys to read the book and let me know what you think about it. Please let me know your ideas because the narcissism has been depicted in a very different light over here. So let me know.
It's a riveting tale. Please read it. You'll enjoy reading it and you'll be thanking the author later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Uh, Anyone is having any questions to ask to sir and ma'am? Is there any questions that you would like to ask sir and ma'am? Yeah. Yeah.
How will your question set, ma'am?
Yeah. Anyone? Any questions? Okay, so that's it. Thank you so much, sir and ma'am. Yeah, thank you so much, sir and ma'am, on behalf of entire KLF team. And it was a great pleasure having you here. Thank you so much, sir and ma'am. Thank you so much. Hello. Yeah, so everyone, there would be a 5-minute break next, and we'll be starting the next session after 5 minutes. Thank you so much. Hello, hello. Yeah, so sorry for the delay and very good evening, and we would be starting the session, the next session. So please be seated, everyone. And yeah, so very good evening, everyone present over here, ladies and gentlemen. And I would like to begin. I'll like to begin the session with giving a view about cinema as in general. Cinema is not just what we watch on screen, it is a record of who we are, how we think, and how we remember. To understand cinema deeply, we need to understand the voices that have observed it with patient insight and integrity. Joining him this evening is Joining us this evening is Bhavna Somaya, a distinguished film critic, columnist, and author who has been writing on Indian cinema for nearly 5 decades. She is the former editor of Screen and the author of acclaimed biographies of legendary stars including Hema Malini and Amitabh Bachchan. Her work continues to guide students of cinema at institutions such as Whistling Woods, Mumbai, Manipal University, Bangalore, and JNU Delhi. We also have with us Vidurta Patnaik, adding a contemporary voice to the cinematic conversation here at KLF 2026. Please join me in welcoming our speakers for what promises to be a thoughtful and engaging evening with them. Please, I would like to welcome them on the stage. Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining the session. We are glad that you are part of KLF. So, yeah, you can begin the session, ma'am. Thank you so much.
पहले तो यहाँ पर उपस्थित सारे अतिथि जो बैठे हैं उनका स्वागत है। ज़रा सोचिए कि यदि हमारी ज़िंदगी की रोज़मर्रा की ज़िंदगी में एंटरटेनमेंट न होता तो लाइफ बड़ी बोरिंग हो जाती, और ख़ास तौर से यदि सिनेमा ना होता। मेरे ख्याल से हम भारतीयों में बॉलीवुड बड़ा अंदर तक रच बस गया है, और उसी बॉलीवुड की नस नस को पहचानने वाली एक बहुत अच्छी समीक्षक और स्क्रीन की एडिटर रह चुकी हैं, और इस वक्त रेडियो से जुड़ी हुई आज हमारी अतिथि हैं भावना सोमैया जी। भावना जी, आपका स्वागत है आज के सेशन पर। आप पिछले 5 दशकों से फिल्म जर्नलिज्म के आप शीर्ष में रही हैं। एकदम जैसे आपका हर सिनेमा के हर बड़े स्टार सुपरस्टार से बहुत अच्छा रिश्ता रहा है। एक बेहतरीन समीक्षक रही हैं। 2017 में आपको भारत के राष्ट्रपति से पद्मश्री की उपाधि दी गई थी। भावना जी, थोड़ा सा हम मैं जानती हूँ कि आज हम आपकी किताब पे बातें करेंगे ज़्यादा, बट थोड़ा सा यहाँ पे बैठे हुए दर्शकों के लिए मैं जानना चाहूँगी कि क्या आप एक एक्सीडेंटल कब रिपोर्टर थी, क्योंकि आप तो लॉ पढ़ रही थी, लॉयर बनना चाहती थी कि नहीं? तो ये इस तरफ सिनेमा की तरफ आपका रुझान कैसे बढ़ा?
थैंक यू। एंड थोड़ा सा ही सिनेमा पर बात होगी क्योंकि माय लेटेस्ट बुक इज़ कॉल्ड फेयरवेल कराची, and I would like to focus on that. I just finished a cinema session in the adjoining room. After graduation, all my friends were not keen on pursuing studies, and I wanted to do further studies. So first I enrolled in MA in psychology. तो वहाँ पे कुछ बहुत दिल नहीं लगा. So I enrolled myself in law college in the morning, and in the evening I was doing post-graduation in journalism. So after 1 year, and the law took about 3 years, my father said that now you have to make up your mind whether you want to be a journalist or you want to be a lawyer. And I said, I want to be a journalist. And I think my father was disappointed because उनको लगा कि भूखे मरेगी और writing से क्या कोई पैसा कमाता है क्या. But आज मैं कोर्ट के बाहर देखती हूँ तो काला कोट पहनकर वो लोग भी इधर उधर भीख ही मांग रहे होते हैं। उससे बेटर तो हम हमारा दिमाग और दिल इस्तेमाल करते हैं और पैसा भी कमाते हैं किताबों से कम, अपने प्रोफेशन से ज़्यादा। तो ऐसा कोई सपना नहीं था, कोई आइडल नहीं था। मुझे तो एक्चुअली वर्किंग वुमन भी नहीं बनना था। आई हैड नो ड्रीम्स एंड नो एस्पिरेशंस, आई वांटेड टू बी नथिंग। तो बिकॉज आई एम द यंगेस्ट इन माई फैमिली एंड आई एम द 8th चाइल्ड ऑफ माई पेरेंट्स। तो मैं बहुत नाजों से पली थी, तो मुझे लगा कि काम वाम क्यों करना है, कोई ना कोई मेरे को डांट देगा, मुझे कुछ आएगा नहीं समझ में, क्योंकि घर पे कोई ना कोई और डिसीजन लेता था हर चीज़ के लिए। तो जब कुछ होना होता है तो बस हो ही जाता है। तो आई थिंक एक माई पेरेंट्स हैड गॉन टू मीट माई ब्रदर इन कैनेडा फॉर 3 months and there was an ad in the paper that said that wanted college girls with flair for writing. उस ज़माने में अगर आप इंटरव्यू के लिए जाते थे तो आपको साड़ी पहनकर जाना होता था। मेरे पास तो कुछ साड़ियाँ थी नहीं, मेरी बड़ी दीदी की साड़ी थी और कुछ उसके प्लेटफॉर्म हील्स पहनकर ताज होटल में वॉक इन इंटरव्यू था। ताज होटल में हमारे कॉलेज के बॉयफ्रेंड्स हमको ले नहीं जाते थे, हमको कॉलेज कैंटीन में 25 पैसे की चाय पिलाते थे और उस 25 पैसा हम खुद देते थे, क्योंकि दे यूज्ड टू से कि यू वांट इक्वालिटी, पुल योर ओन चेयर एंड मेक योरसेल्फ इक्वल एंड पे फॉर योर ओन टी। तो अच्छा है कि हम लोग को ऐसे कॉलेज फ्रेंड्स मिले थे जिसने हमारे पर खर्चा नहीं किया, ताकि उनको भी हमसे कोई ज़्यादा उम्मीद नहीं रही। तो ये ताज होटल में मैं गई और पूरा भरा हुआ था, तो मैं हैरान थी कि so many people assume themselves to be writers and so many people read newspapers. तो उन लोग ने मुझसे कुछ सवाल जवाब किए and then within 10 minutes they said that okay, we are giving you this job. So I said, what is the job? So they said, a film journalist. So I said, I don't want to be a film journalist. So they said, but we are giving you 500 rupees. I said, no, I don't want. उसके बाद my parents had returned from the Canada trip और MTNL का एक फ़ोन घर के बीच में रखा था, ताकि my father had a proper eye on मैं और मेरी बहन किसके साथ कितनी देर तक बात करते हैं। तो ये स्ट्रेंजर आदमी दिल्ली से बार बार फ़ोन कर रहा था। तो मेरी माँ ने पूछा कि ये कौन है और तुमको क्यों बार बार फ़ोन कर रहा है। तो मैंने कहा कि वो दिल्ली से कोई अखबार निकालने वाले हैं एंड वो कहते हैं कि वो मुझे काम देना चाहते हैं और 500 रुपया देंगे। तो मेरी माँ ने कहा कि तुम में ऐसा, तो मैंने तो कभी कोई हुनर देखा नहीं है, तो ये तो पक्का फ्रॉड आदमी है। तो उसने बोला मना कर दो, हमारे घर की लड़कियां ऐसे सब फिल्म वाल्म में कुछ काम नहीं करेगी। तो मैंने उनको बोला कि आई डोंट वांट टू डू इट। तो उन्होंने कहा कि यू आस्क योर मदर व्हाट इज़ द प्रॉब्लम। सो आई टोल्ड माय मदर, शी इज़ आस्किंग व्हाट इज़ द प्रॉब्लम। तो मेरी माँ ने कहा कि किसी को 6 बजे के बाद इंटरव्यू नहीं करोगे, यू विल नॉट गो फॉर अ फिल्म पार्टी एंड यू विल नॉट गो एनीवेयर आउट ऑफ टाउन। तो महात्मा गांधी की माँ की तरह मेरी माँ ने भी 3 शर्तें लगा दी थी। तो आई टोल्ड हिम माय मदर इज सेइंग 1 2 3, ही सेइंग ओके। नाउ माय मदर बिकेम इवन मोर सस्पिशियस। शी सेड, एक तो तुम में मैंने कोई हुनर नहीं देखा है, ऊपर से वो तुम्हारी सारी शर्तें भी मान रहे हैं, तो ये आदमी तो पक्का गड़बड़ है। तो पता नहीं क्या फिर मेरे माँ बाप ने अपने आप में डिस्कशन किया होगा, उन्होंने सोचा होगा कि लेट अस इंडल्ज हर, थोड़े टाइम में शादी करके चली जाएगी, कुछ नहीं है। तो उन लोग ने हाँ भर दी और मुझे कोई ऐसे खास रस नहीं था। मैं तो कॉलेज में जाती थी, वो लोग मेरे को बोलते थे यहाँ जाओ वहाँ जाओ, तो मैं चली जाती थी, इंटरव्यू कर लेती थी। मेरे अंदर कोई डर नहीं था, क्योंकि मेरे अंदर कोई एम्बिशन नहीं था। इट वॉज नथिंग लाइक कि मुझे ये पाना है और वो मेरे बारे में क्या सोचेंगे। जैसा आता था वैसा लिख के मैं दे देती थी। पता नहीं कैसे ये कुछ हफ्ते की बात 50 साल हो गए। कॉलेज में सीधा, मैं कॉलेज से सीधा जाती थी स्टूडियोज़ में। मेकअप रूम में जाके रेखा हो या कोई और, मेकअप रूम में हम नॉक करते थे और कोई ऐसी ग्रूमिंग भी नहीं थी। अभी सुबह से आप एक कपड़े पहनकर कॉलेज गए हो, पूरा दिन आपके 4-5 लेक्चर्स होते हैं, उसके बाद एक मामूली ट्रेन में बैठकर आप उतर के वहाँ से चल के जाते हो। मुझे याद नहीं है कि कभी मेरे पर्स में कंघी या आईना भी होता था। और ऐसे कोई अमीर घर के थे नहीं, मिडिल क्लास घर के थे, जैसे चप्पल थे जैसे कपड़े पहनते थे बट क्या है ना आजकल के जो बच्चे हैं वो हमसे ज़्यादा खूबसूरत और इंटेलिजेंट है.
मैं इसी बात पे आना चाह रही थी कि भावना जी आपने अपने 70 के दशक 80 90 के दशक का फिल्म जर्नलिज्म देखा. वो एक बहुत अलग प्रकार का था मेरे ख्याल से, क्योंकि मैं भी एक फिल्म बफ, बहुत फिल्में देखती हूँ, मज़े आते हैं मुझे. हम रिव्यूज़ पढ़ के जाया करते थे फिल्म देखने. तो उस वक्त का जो आपका एक निष्पक्ष भाव से फिल्म को रिव्यू करना आपके लिए एक बहुत बड़ी जिम्मेदारी थी. क्या कभी आपने किसी दबाव को महसूस किया? क्योंकि आज के ज़माने में सोशल मीडिया में हर दूसरा तीसरा बंदा एक फिल्म एक्सपर्ट या फिल्म क्रिटिक बन के अपनी राय देता है. तो तब का जो एक चलन था और अब इसमें आप क्या सोचती हैं कि ये क्या क्या हो रहा है इस वक्त?
उस वक्त मैं फिल्म रिव्यूज़ नहीं करती थी because you are not as yet groomed to be a film critic. To be a film critic, you have to understand cinema. You can't be a young reporter and start reviewing films, which is what is happening today. Because there is nobody to guide them, there is nobody to supervise them. The editor sends anybody who is having no specific portfolio to send and do reviews. Because सबको लगता है कि फिल्म ही देखना है, उसमें कौन सी बड़ी बात है, कोई भी रिव्यू कर सकता है. ऐसा नहीं है. तो I was a cub reporter, then I became a chief reporter, then I became a special correspondent, then I became an assistant editor, then I became an editor. And after that, when I left screen,
Your transition to radio was there.
when I left screen on an ideological reason, I was without a job for a month. और Big FM radio ने मुझे फ़ोन किया कि we want you to be a film reviewer. तो आप आके रिव्यू पा का कर दीजिए. अमिताभ बच्चन की फिल्म थी पा. सो आई वेंट एंड आई रिव्यू द फिल्म एंड आई केम बैक. बिग एफएम का स्टूडियो मेरे घर से सिर्फ एक सड़क दूर था, तो मैं चल कर जाती थी.
और मैंने सुना है तब आपको हिंदी बोलनी उतनी अच्छी नहीं आती.
मुझे आई थिंक इन इंग्लिश, आई राइट इन इंग्लिश एंड आई माई आइडेंटिटी इज एज अ इंग्लिश राइटर. एंड हिंदी बॉम्बे में सबको लगता है कि उनको आती है, मगर वो हिंदी हिंदी नहीं है. आप जो बोल रही है वो हिंदी है.
वैसे मैं भी बॉम्बे में ही रहती हूँ.
नहीं, मगर आपकी ज़बान अच्छी है, आपकी आवाज़ अच्छी है, आप साफ हिंदी बोलती है. तो आई डिड द रिव्यू एंड आई केम अवे एंड आई वाज कॉल्ड बैक इन 5 minutes because I done the review in English. And the CEO said that भावना जी आपको हिंदी में रिव्यू करना पड़ेगा. तो आई सेड नहीं, मेरा उच्चार ठीक नहीं है, मैं हिंदी में नहीं कर सकती हूँ. आई डोंट थिंक इन हिंदी. ही सेड वो सब मैं नहीं जानता हूँ, तुमको करना पड़ेगा. फिर मैंने घर जाके रोमन इंग्लिश में, जैसे इंग्लिश में ही लिखा एंड आई वेंट बैक एंड डिड इट. तो जो इंजीनियर मुझे याद है कि द इंजीनियर हु वाज रिकॉर्डिंग मी, he looked shell shocked and he could not hide his expression. And when it was over, he said, ma'am, please don't go. He went and called the CEO to the recording room and he played it in front of me, and it was bad. But I think it was bad according to what they were expecting. After that, they both looked at each other, then he played it again. Then again they looked at each other. And then my CEO, young boy, the average age of the Big FM was 25, 35.
Because it was a
It was a
very young
blossoming thing, and I was the oldest. And he said that, Bhavna, your Hindi is not up to the mark, but there are two things which are very good. One is your voice, and second is your content, and I will gamble on that. And you promised that you will work on it. I said, I'll try. अब उस वक्त मेरे पास नौकरी नहीं थी, तो मेरा हाथ तंग था, तो मैंने सोचा कि मैं कैसे अपना हिंदी ठीक करूं. तो मैं कोई गुरु या ऐसे नहीं रखना चाहती थी. तो उस दिन मैंने 2 नियम बनाए कि मैं सबके साथ सिर्फ हिंदी में बात करूंगी, even if they start the conversation in English, because I was confident of my English and it was parked, and the English was not going to change. I needed to work on my Hindi, so I would speak to everybody in Hindi and I would reply to everybody in Hindi. And second, I started watching Hindi news. I stopped watching the English news that I was accustomed to. बिगनिंग में फिर भी बहुत मुश्किल था, क्योंकि जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल अगर मुझे एंग्जाइटी, So I would write anxiety and go there and I'll catch one of the Hindi RJs and I'll say, रानी मुझे बताओ कि एंग्जाइटी को हिंदी में क्या कहते हैं? तो उससे मुझे कुछ बहुत कठिन शब्द दिया, तो मैंने कहा नहीं ऐसा नहीं, थोड़ा सा फीमेल वर्ड जैसे मेरी ज़बान से निकले ऐसा दो। तो उसने कहा उत्तेजना। मैंने कहा अरे वाह ये तो कितना अच्छा शब्द है। तो इस तरह से ढूंढते ढूंढते कुछ फिल्म डायलॉग से, कुछ ज़िंदगी से, कुछ कलीग से, आज मैं कॉन्फिडेंटली दोनों भाषा अच्छी तरह से बोल सकती हूँ।
ये तो कहा जा सकता है कि आप में गट्स है और आप किसी भी चीज़ को सीखने में कभी मना नहीं करती हैं। आपने कहीं पे कहा कि मैं फूलन देवी हूँ, किसी रेडियो पे।
नहीं, फूलन देवी तो मैं इसलिए कहती थी क्योंकि आप जब एडिटर होते हो तो आपके डेडलाइंस होते हैं। अभी जैसे स्क्रीन इज़ अ ब्रॉडशीट 36 पेजेस, इट हैज़ टू गो टू प्रिंट, और सबके डेट्स होते हैं कि ये टाइम पे इतने पेजेस जाएंगे, इतने पेजेस जाएंगे। तो अब मैं अकेली तो नाच नहीं सकती हूँ ना, तो जो मेरे राइटर्स हैं उन लोग को वो टाइम पे कॉपी देना ही पड़ता है, तो आर्टिस्ट पेज बनाएगा, तो वो प्रिंटिंग के लिए जाएगा। तो मैं निकलती थी छड़ी लेकर फूलन देवी की तरह, नॉट लिटरली, एंड आई सिट ऑन एवरीबॉडीज हेड, जल्दी करो जल्दी करो जल्दी करो,
ताकि अगले दिन
ताकि बराबर सही समय पे जाए। तो 1-2 हफ्ता लगता है उनको समझने के ये फूलन देवी है, तो अपने आप सब आ जाता है टाइम पे, एक इमेज जमाना पड़ता है उन पर। मगर एक चीज़ मैंने आपने जब रिव्यू का कहा, तो अभी क्या है टुडे, if you notice any film releases, somebody is giving it 1 star, somebody is giving it 5 stars. So every time everybody asks me that how can there be so much of disparity? The disparity is because there is a 20-year-old who is a reviewer and there is a 70-year-old who is also a reviewer.
सोचने का
70 मतलब वो मेरी उम्र है, मेरे को शर्म नहीं है कहने की, 50 साल से मैं लिख रही हूँ और 20 साल की थी तब से मैंने शुरू किया है। So the mindset of the 20 and the 70 is completely different. Your sensibilities are different. Your aesthetics are different. Your understanding is different. Your background is different. Your personal choices are different. So it's different. कई बार मैं देखती हूँ कि जो फिल्म मुझे पसंद आती है मेरे किसी कलीग को पसंद नहीं आई है, तो आप अगर घबरा के डर के कि अरे मैंने तो गलत नहीं कर लिया, जिसको जो सोचना है सोचे। मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है आपको फिल्म देखनी है तो देखो, नहीं देखनी है तो मत देखो, आपको मुझे जो बुलाना है बुलाओ।
तो एक ऑनेस्ट रिव्यू करना बहुत ज़रूरी है फिल्म देखने वाले को जो रिव्यू कर रहे हैं। रिव्यू कर आप एडिटर, मतलब बेसिकली आप अपने शब्दों के साथ खेलती रही हैं और करते करते आपने किताबें लिखी, यू बिकेम अ ऑथर। आपने अमिताभ, कई जगह पे आप शायद इससे पहले भी बात कर चुकी होंगी, अमिताभ बच्चन पे आपने 3 किताबें लिखी। आप क्या इतना उनको सही, इतने करीब से जानती थी कि आपको लगा कि मैं इनके ऊपर 3 किताबें लिख सकूं, या उसके पीछे की कोई कहानी है?
ये बार बार पूछा जाता है, सत्यजीत रे को कोई नहीं पूछता है कि अपू ट्रिलॉजी व्हाई यू डिड इट। सत्यजीत रे ने भी तो अपू पर 3 फिल्में बनाई थी। देखिए अमिताभ बच्चन मीडिया से 18 साल बात नहीं कर रहे थे, तो ही वॉज अ फॉरबिडन फ्रूट फॉर एवरीबडी। मैं जब कब रिपोर्टर थी वो सुपरस्टार थे, मैं धीरे धीरे जब मंजिलें चढ़ रही थी वो सुपरस्टार थे, मैं एडिटर बन गई वो अब भी सुपरस्टार थे। तो उन्होंने एक दिन अचानक मीडिया से अपना बैन लिफ्ट कर लिया, एंड आई वाज द फर्स्ट जर्नलिस्ट ही स्पोक टू।
So you were fortunate that
नो, शायद मैं दूसरे से थोड़ी ज़्यादा
अलग
सॉफ्ट लग रही होंगी, तो ऐसे शक्ल से साड़ी वाड़ी पहनती हूँ ना इसलिए, तो हूँ भी, ऐसा नहीं है। तो उनके साथ बहुत सारी बातें की थी, बार बार इंटरव्यू होता था। तो 90 के दशक में computers were new to India, and I had not yet learned the computer. I had a secretary, so she used to type my articles. And one day she told me that, ma'am, please don't do any more interviews with Amitabh Bachchan because I don't know what name to call the file. Kyunki AB, Big B, Bachchan, Amitabh Bachchan, Amit. She said I've even put my family names on Amitabh Bachchan's stories. इतनी ज़्यादा हो गई है। तो मैंने कहा नहीं नहीं ऐसा नहीं हो सकता। तो भी I re-looked at it and I made it into a book. उसमें से क्या है, पब्लिशिंग लॉज होते हैं कि सारा कितने पेजेस होने चाहिए, कितने वर्ड्स होने चाहिए, क्योंकि उनको इकोनॉमिकली परवड़ना चाहिए। तो बच गया था, मेरे पास पड़ा था। और फिर जो दूसरी किताब थी बचनेलिया, which came exactly 10 years after the first one. He had the posters of Amitabh Bachchan and he was looking for content. And what जो portion निकाल दिया गया था, वो सब ये था जो ट्रिविया थी उनकी हर फिल्म के बारे में. तो that became the second book.
सो आपके इन 3 किताबों से जो फिल्म के पढ़ने वाले हैं उनके लिए बहुत ही फ़ायदा रहा अमिताभ जी को एक अलग तरीके से जानने का. अब एक थोड़ा सा ये सवाल पूछना चाहूँगी कि ये हमें पता है कि शशि कपूर आपके बहुत प्रिय स्टार हुआ करते थे. आपने कभी ये नहीं सोचा कि मैं उन पे कुछ लिखूं?
नहीं, बस वो मेरे हार्ट थ्रॉब
आपके
है.
दिल पे ही रह गया?
हाँ, नहीं, वो मेरे हार्ट थ्रॉब है. मेरे को ऑफर आया था, मैंने कहा नहीं, मैं नहीं करना चाहूँगी, क्योंकि मैं उनको देखते ही इतनी खुश हो जाती थी. इतना गुड लुकिंग आदमी. मैं कॉलेज के ज़माने से उनको मिलने जाया करती थी. कई बार मेरे एडिटर बोलते थे कि फ़ोटोशूट उनके साथ करना है तो तुम अभी चली जाओ. तो मैं अपने कपड़े देखती थी और मैं बोलती हूँ आज नहीं जाती हूँ मैं. तो उन्होंने कहा क्यों? तो मैंने कहा नहीं, आज मैं अच्छी नहीं लग रही हूँ. तो उन्होंने कहा तुमको उसकी तुम्हारी शक्ल से कुछ नहीं है, तुमको सिर्फ उनसे बात करनी है. बट ही वॉज वेरी स्वीट, वेरी नाइस, वेरी चार्मिंग. और ऐसा नहीं था कि एक क्रश था, एक सचमुच का लगाव था. प्यार नहीं था, लगाव था.
तो बहुत अच्छे इंसान की तरह से आपके सामने
और
वो
कितने
पेश आए.
सालों से चलता रहा. फिर वो मोटे हो गए, फिर वो बूढ़े हो गए, फिर भी मैं उनसे मोहब्बत करती थी. पृथ्वी थिएटर में पृथ्वी फेस्टिवल होता था, ओपनिंग में हमेशा इतने सालों से
वही
जाती
मेरा
रही हूँ.
सवाल यही था कि उनकी इतनी डाइवर्स पर्सनालिटी थी. ही वाज फ्रॉम थिएटर एंड पृथ्वी थिएटर इज अ लेजेंड. इट्स लाइक इन बॉम्बे हु गोस वुड
और
लाइक टू
शशि
सी.
कपूर के बड़े बड़े बच्चे हैं, कुणाल,
मैं ये कहती कि
संजना.
आपके पास तो बहुत कुछ था, आप एक और किताब लिखने का सोच
नहीं,
सकती
तो वो
हैं.
लोग मुझे बोलते थे कि व्हाई डू यू लाइक माय डैड? आई सेड ही इज गॉर्जियस, ही इज माय बॉयफ्रेंड. फिर शशि जी नहीं रहे, तो जब मैं पहली बार पृथ्वी थिएटर गई, मुझे लगता है कि जितना मुझे दर्द हुआ पृथ्वी थिएटर में पाँव रखना, क्या है जो परिवार के लोग होते हैं जो खो देते हैं, उनको धीरे धीरे उस इंसान के ना होने की आदत पड़ जाती है. मगर जो हम बाहर वाले उनको प्यार करते हैं, उनके लिए बहुत मुश्किल है. और ये जगह ऐसी है कि आपको लोगों से लगाव हो जाता है, उनको आपसे लगाव हो जाता है. जैसे यश जी, यश चोपड़ा. तो I could not enter Yash Raj studio to watch a film or to go for a shooting event or something. I used to feel a lot of pain in my heart because I was very fond of Yash ji, and Yash ji was also reciprocating that kind of affection to me. बल्कि जब मैं स्क्रीन की एडिटर हुई तो उन्होंने फ़ोन करके कहा कि अब तुम, क्योंकि स्क्रीन इज़ अ सिनेमा पेपर, सो इट्स नॉट लाइक द बाकी अदर न्यूज़
मैगजीन की तरह.
तो उन्होंने कहा अब तुम हमारी बिरादरी में आई हो, और मैं जब फ़ोन करके बोलूँ कि यहाँ आना है तो मुझे सवाल पूछे बगैर आना है. ये एक मिथ है कि ये बहुत डर्टी जगह है या यहाँ के लोग अच्छे नहीं होते. ऐसा नहीं है. आपको बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिलता है.
एक आम इंसान के लिए थोड़ा मिस्टिकल सा लगता है क्योंकि उनकी पहुंच नहीं होती है वहां
उनकी
तक.
पहुंच नहीं होती है और इतनी दूर है ये लोग आपसे कि आप लोग सिर्फ अपनी राय बना लेते हो और फिर उस राय में जिंदा रहते हो, और जो सच है वो सिर्फ हम देखते हैं. तो यश जी जिस तरह से बातें करते थे, एक गुरु की तरह बात करते थे. और शशि कपूर भी, जैसे कि मुझे याद है कि उनकी एक फिल्म थी फांसी, तो उस वक्त मेरे को हिंदी अच्छी नहीं थी, तो मैं कुछ फांसी, बिकॉज इन इंग्लिश यू स्पेल इट एस FAANSI. तो ही सर क्या कहा, तो 4 बार बुलवाया, तो उसने कहा फांसी कुछ नहीं होता है, फांसी होता है. तो वो सिखाते थे. एक बार मुझे याद है उनकी शूटिंग में मैं गई तो वो मेकअप रूम की कुछ कमी थी, तो ही वॉज शेयरिंग अ रूम विथ भारत भूषण जी, सीनियर एक्टर. तो मैं उनसे बात कर रही थी तो उन्होंने मुझे ऐसे इशारा करके कहा कि यू आर नॉट टॉकिंग टू भारत भूषण जी. तो मैंने धीरे से उनसे कहा कि मैं उनको नहीं जानती हूँ. ही गॉट अप एंड ही सेड नहीं जानती हूँ मतलब तुम हो कौन? बैजू बावरा नहीं मालूम, तानसेन नहीं मालूम, उठो. सबको बोला, सबसे, डायरेक्टर, प्रोड्यूसर, राइटर, कोरियोग्राफर, जितने लोग थे सेट पे, बोला सबको नमस्ते करो. वो लोग भी हैरान थे कि ये जर्नलिस्ट से सबसे नमस्ते
So
करवा रहा है.
basically he also taught you
He
how to
taught me.
respect artist.
Very sweet and so much. He used to say that a journalist should build a relationship with an actor or a filmmaker on the foundation of trust. ये नहीं कि अपना काम करके निकल जाओ, आपको इस तरह से इंटरव्यू करना चाहिए. और इस तरह से लिखना चाहिए कि जब आप फ़ोन करो तो आपको कोई मना नहीं कर सके। एक क्रेडिबिलिटी का एक स्टैम्प लगना चाहिए कि भावना का फ़ोन आया है तो वो अच्छे सवाल ही करेगी और अच्छा ही लिखेगी।
So he must be so proud of you, Bhavna ji, that you have that credibility as a film journalist. Bhavna ji, आप कितने लोगों के स्टार, सुपरस्टार, लेजेंड सबसे आप मिलती रहीं, तो कितना आसान या कितना कठिन था कि आप वहाँ ग्लैमर वाली वर्ल्ड से जब आप अपने घर लौटती थी, how was the transition when you come back home, when you come back to your own parents? So do you think that your parents' upbringing kind of made you the way you are, who's not मतलब चकाचौंध से आप उतनी प्रभावित नहीं रहीं, आपका अपना एक personality है?
Of course, the parents, of course, played a big part in what I am today. In fact, whatever I am today is because of the parents. मगर वो चकाचौंधी से मुझे क्या, मैं थोड़ी फिल्मों में काम कर रही हूँ, ना मुझे एक फिल्म में काम करना है, ना मुझे उनसे शादी करनी है, तो फिर मुझे क्या, अपनी रेगुलर ज़िंदगी में वापस आती थी। और मेरी सारी दोस्तों, जो पूरा कॉलेज क्राउड, दे वर ऑल्सो नॉट एट ऑल ओवरऑल। आज तक वो मैं हमारे पूरे ग्रुप में आई एम द वन इन द मोस्ट ग्लैमरस प्रोफेशन। वो लोग एयरलाइंस में है या कुछ और चीज़ें करते हैं, मगर वो सब मेरे से ज़्यादा ग्लैमरस है। वो लोग लेटेस्ट बाल स्ट्रीक करा के ऐसे मॉडर्न कपड़े पहनते हैं, मुझे अच्छे नहीं लगते हैं क्योंकि मुझे सूट नहीं करते हैं। तो मैं सबसे क्या बोलते हैं, देसी हूँ।
नहीं, पर आप अपनी गरिमा में रहकर हमेशा
नहीं, वो कोई बात नहीं, जो भी है यही है। अभी अभी तो क्या बदला जाएगा। तो
So yes, your parents have definitely made a very played a very great
पर एक
part.
चीज़ है कि आप जब क्या है, यहाँ अबव एवरेज पीपल होते हैं सिनेमा वर्ल्ड में, एंड आई एम नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट जस्ट गुड लुक्स, आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट टैलेंट, आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट passion, I'm talking about multitasking, I'm talking about efficiency, I'm talking about efficiency. तो ये इतने कलाकार लोगों को मिलने के बाद आपको जीवन साथी मामूली ज़िंदगी से चुनना और उसके साथ ज़िंदगी निभाना मुश्किल है। तो मैंने जब ये शुरुआत की थी तब मेरे माँ बाप ने कहा था कि ये फिल्मी दुनिया में गई है तो अभी इससे हमारी बिरादरी में से तो कोई शादी नहीं करेगा। तो एक तरह से ये बात सच भी हुई। तो ठीक है।
भावना जी, आप
Can any youngster come and just open this bottle and pour me water? Where is my fellow?
ओके, भावना जी, ये इतनी सारी विधाओं के बाद, जैसे आप प्रिंट मीडिया में रहीं, फिर रेडियो में आई, फिर डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म भी आपने, अब सोशल मीडिया, सो इतने आयामों के बाद आप लेखिका रहीं, ऑथर रहीं, आपको कौन सा वाला क्षेत्र आपको लगता है बहुत ज़्यादा अट्रैक्ट करता है? क्योंकि मुझे लगता है एज अ राइटर, अभी रिसेंटली जो आपकी किताब आपकी पब्लिश हुई है, फेयरवेल टू कराची, विच इज़ नॉट अ फिल्मी राइटिंग, ये बिल्कुल अलग, ये आपकी निजी ज़िंदगी से जुड़ी हुई है, आपके पिता की कहानी है, आपके परिवार की कहानी है। और ऑडियंस को मैं बताना चाहती हूँ कि हम लोग सोचते हैं कि पार्टीशन पे लिखी गई ये किताब, अक्सर ये देखा जाता है कि पार्टीशन को नॉर्थ के साथ जोड़ा जाता है, पंजाब के साथ जोड़ा जाता है, पर बंगाल के साथ। पर ये किताब जो है भावना जी ने लिखी है एक गुजराती फैमिली की, जो कराची से इंडिया आते हैं। मैं उनसे सुनना चाहती हूँ कि इस किताब के बारे में कहाँ से शुरुआत हुई और उन्होंने क्यों सोचा कि अपनी इस निजी कहानी को एक पुस्तक के रूप में लाने की क्यों उनके विचार आया उनके ध्यान में?
So I have done 20 books. This is my 20th book. Out of these, 3 are on Bachchan, 1 biography on Hema Malini, 2 books on Lord Krishna, 1 book on Garbh Sanskar, and I forget. Yeah, 2 books on translations of the Prime Minister's book. I was saying that मेरे को याद क्यों नहीं आ रहा है. Thank you. तो ये बुक मैं बहुत बहुत सालों से लिखना चाहती थी, but it was not happening. I just didn't know how to begin the book because I felt that मैं जब से पैदा हुई हूँ तब से हम घर पे हमेशा कराची की बातें सुनते आ रहे हैं कि कराची में ऐसा होता था, कराची में ऐसा होता था, मगर कभी माँ बाप के साथ बैठ के पूरी कराची के माइग्रेशन की कहानी नहीं सुनी. मुझे ऐसा लगा कि आई कैन ओनली डू द बुक इफ़ आई विजिट कराची, एंड गोइंग टू कराची इन प्रेजेंट टाइम्स इज़ इम्पॉसिबल. बिफोर दैट आई ट्राइड 2-3 टाइम्स. ट्रिप प्लान भी हो गई मगर प्लेन में चढ़ नहीं पाई, किस्मत में नहीं था. और मुझे लगा कि आई कांट राइट दिस बुक अनलेस आई स्मेल द सॉइल ऑफ कराची. फिर एक बार आई वॉज इन अ कार विद अ फ्रेंड and she said, what is your biggest fear? And I said, I fear not having a roof above my head. Now this is something completely illogical because with God's grace I have everything. So how can I fear not having a roof above my head? And whenever I've said this to a friend or to my sister, they've all laughed at it. But this friend who is a psychiatrist, she didn't laugh. She said it's a sign of displacement.
That's very, very strange.
So I said, this is the first time somebody has understood me. But I said, how can I feel the pain of displacement because I am not a victim of the partition. I was not born at that time. She said, your parents underwent partition. They were displaced, they migrated, and you are the recipient of that pain. Now we are 8 children. देखो हम बार बार डिस्कस करते हैं ना कि हमारे अगर 4 बच्चे हैं तो सब अलग अलग है. माँ बाप एक होते हैं और वो एक ही संस्कार देते हैं अपने बच्चों को, मगर वो बच्चा इज एन इंडिविजुअल और वो किस तरह से खिलेगा और कौन सा ज़्यादा खिलेगा वो किसी को नहीं मालूम, और कौन सा बच्चा रेसिपिएंट होगा. So the 6 children of my parents were born in Karachi. My parents were married in Karachi, engaged in Karachi. My mother was in school when my father was taken to the school and from far told that that is the girl you are getting married to. My mother was in a frock, she went and sat in her car, and my father went and sat in the Tonga. Time ho gaya. After that, they got married. It was a large joint family. There were 3 sisters-in-law and सबको अलग अलग काम दिया जाता था. और मेरी माँ बहुत ही अमीर घराने से थी और उसको उसकी जेठानी और दूसरी जेठानी ने काम दिया था घर का कपड़ा धोना. तो वो रात को मेरे पिताजी से कहती थी कि मेरे रिस्ट दुखते हैं. तो माय फादर यूज्ड टू टेल हर कि दूसरों के कपड़े धोना, मेरे जो कपड़े हैं वो उसको मत धोना. जब मैं नहाने जाता हूँ तब मुझे चुपके से दे देना, मैं खुद धो लूँगा. मैं बात इसलिए बता रही हूँ कि दिस इज़ द रियल मैन, अ सपोर्टिव मैन, द न्यू मैन, नॉट अ शोविनिस्ट मैन. उसके बाद when the World War I happened, the World War II happened, they experienced that, and then they had packed bags and they were told that go back to Kutch. Then the partition, the war, this happened, हिंदुस्तान
1947.
पाकिस्तान. और फिर किस तरह से उन लोग ने पैक करके 6 बच्चे की स्टीमर की टिकट, माँ बाप यानी 8 लोग स्टीमर में बिठा के he came to drop my mother and the children to Kutch, where my maternal grandfather had taken a villa for them and he settled them there. And in this riots, my father went back to Karachi because he used to work for the Bharat Petroleum, that is Bharat Petroleum today. At that time it was Burma Shell, और उनको work orders नहीं दिए थे. So he continued to be in that riot place and he said that till I get my work orders in my hand, I will not leave the soil. And when the British boss of his said go, he said, no sir, I have 8 mouths to feed. And there must have been something so sincere about my father that that British boss immediately sanctioned his work order. And then my father booked a ticket and got back to the thing to come back. But it was a horrible journey because the steamer was overcrowded and he could not hop onto it. The steamer sailed away. तो कुछ वहाँ लोग थे जो एक फिशरमैन बोट जा रही थी तो उसमें जंप कर लिया. तो my father said कि I had two choices. Either I jump onto the fisherman boat and maybe never reach Kutch, or I stay here and get killed. तो 4 दिन लगे थे on that fisherman boat to reach Kutch. They had nothing on the boat to eat or to drink. It was raining, storm, and दोपहर में धूप ऐसे कि काले हो गए. My father said that when I got off at Kutch, I first checked if I had all the fingers on my hands and if I had 4 limbs. And when he reached my house, where I was not yet born, my oldest brother, जब गेट क्लिक हुआ तो उसको लगा कि शायद कैटल, गाय या भैंस वहाँ कुछ परेशान करने आ रही है. तो लकड़े से वो ही घुमा रहे थे. ही लुक लाइक अ बेगर, माय फादर, बिकॉज इतना उसको सारा उसको स्टीमर में जाने से पहले उसको स्ट्रिप करके उससे सब कुछ ले लिया. उसको 4 महीने का सैलरी मिला था. एवरीथिंग वाज रॉब्ड and he was stripped of his clothes or anything. And after all this, how he healed, how he got a shift to Bombay, then how he went to Bombay, then he called his 6 children and my mother to Bombay. And then in 54, my oldest sister was born. Exactly like the film Badhai Ho, जैसे नीना गुप्ता को पता ही नहीं था कि she's pregnant. My mother was having fever, she just went to the lady doctor. And the doctor said, you're pregnant. And my father and mother looked at each other. And that makes a very important chapter in the book, because I always wanted to know that my bhabhi was pregnant at the same time, my oldest sister was pregnant at the same time, and my mother was pregnant at the same time. That how did my parents handle this? How did they break the news to their children that they are pregnant? But you know, this is all overthinking on my part. They just went through the experience organically. One day my mother went to the hospital and came back with a child, and all the older siblings looked after that child. But my grandmother warned my mother, okay, you have a fertility cycle of 2 years, and if you're not careful, you are going to get a second baby. And my mother said, I'm in my menopause, I cannot conceive. But I had to be born. And so 2 years later, I was in the womb. And this time when the lady doctor said that, do you want to consider? Because they are the old world who don't consider abortion. But this time my mother felt that she could not afford, her health was so bad. So they just took some kitchen remedies to make sure that I would be out and washed out of the system. I didn't give up.
But you had to come and be Bhavna Sumaya, the gutsy lady. So this is the book which the recent book. भावना जी, मैं आपसे request करती हूँ.
I want you all to know that please buy the book, because a writer writes about a lack of words to make it into a book, or 75,000 words. And most of the time, she has to rewrite and sculpt her copies to make
Lot
it
of
perfect.
effort goes into
A lot of
bringing
effort
out.
goes, and that many people don't buy it, don't read it. So it's very sad. You all need to encourage literature, particularly at a lit fest. So आपकी ये जो बहुत खूबसूरत मेरी इंटरव्यूअर है,
मैं तो ये कहूँगी कि आप लोग इसको ज़्यादा पढ़ने की कोशिश करिए, क्योंकि ये एक गुजराती फैमिली की माइग्रेशन की कहानी है, नॉट नॉर्थ और पंजाब और
नहीं,
बंगाल.
और उन्होंने बहुत सारा टाइम मेरा सिनेमा की कहानियाँ में ले लिया है, क्योंकि उन्होंने कहा ऑडियंस को इसी में मज़ा आता है. तो मैंने आपको मज़ा दिया है, अभी आप मेरी किताब खरीदिए.
तो एक लास्ट क्वेश्चन सवाल भावना जी आपसे है. बड़ा इवेंटफुल रहा आपका जो करियर है, एक माध्यम से दूसरे माध्यम और इस तरीके से. तो आज आप एक सक्सेसफुल, आई वुड से, एन ऑथर ऑल्सो. सो हाउ वुड यू रेट योर सेल्फ? यू हैव बीन रिव्यूइंग फिल्म्स. आप अपनी इस जर्नी को क्या रेट करेंगे, क्या रिव्यू देंगे? कितना रेट? 5 पे 5?
न मुझे अपने आप को रेट करना है, न मुझे किसी से कोई अपेक्षा है. जो है जो हो गया, बात खत्म.
तो भावना जी, हम चाहते हैं कि आप इसी तरह से लिखते रहिए, अलग अलग सब्जेक्ट्स पे, विषयों पे. आपका बहुत बड़ा ज्ञान का भंडार है. आशा करते हैं कि अगले साल एक और किताब के साथ आपसे मिलेंगे एंड
एक आधा क्वेश्चन लेना है किसी से?
किसी ने कुछ
दो ले सकते हैं ये लोग तो
एनीवन वुड लाइक टू
अब सब शर्माएंगे और कोई पूछेंगे नहीं, चलो नहीं पूछना है तो बात खत्म
Yeah,
हो गई।
anyone from the audience? Any
Harun
questions?
bhai, would you like to ask her something? You watch so
इसी
many
तो इज्जत रख लो, एक सवाल तो पूछ लो कोई।
Yeah.
some films. You are a film buff, film related.
So,
Yeah, the book. Yeah,
You have put a googly to me. Actually, this I have not read this book. I am going to buy the book right now. So this is about partition. I think yesterday I bought a book called Tamash. I have seen that serial. I bought. Actually, this is very tragic that India, contemporary India, this partition is playing every now and then. So how do you heal this? How do you heal this? And I think I look forward to people like you, as authors, as
There is a
commentators.
film which is just released in the theater, but before that, if my volunteer is around, I think the copies should be kept here and somebody should be taking the money of people who buy it. Otherwise, they will go out and they will not buy. I'm telling you, they will not put their hand in the pocket. यहाँ 10-15 कॉपी रख दो ताकि शर्म के मारे कोई 10 किताब खरीद लेगा। जल्दी से जाके लेकर आओ। तो 21 करके a film has been released and it is about India Pakistan and it is not about Pakistan bashing. It is for the first time that a representative of India and a representative of Pakistan are together talking about the tragedy we went through and they both are healing together. जैसे कहते हैं ना एक साथ सोग मनाते हैं. It's a very mature representation और मुझे धर्मेंद्र जी का जो आखिरी डायलॉग है वो बहुत पसंद है क्योंकि वो प्रकृति से प्रेरणा लेकर कहते हैं कि अगर ज़मीन फिर से उत्पन्न हो सकती है, अगर पेड़ पौधे अपने आप फिर से खिल सकते हैं, तो फिर हम इंसान प्रकृति से क्यों नहीं सीखते हैं और जो बीत गया सो बीत गया, अभी आगे बढ़ो.
that's a wonderful ending to our session, Bhavna ji. Thank you so much giving me this opportunity to talk with you. And audience, आप सभी का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. आप लोग बैठकर आज हमारी बातें सुने. आशा करते हैं कि इसी तरह से मिलते रहेंगे. Thank you to
Yeah.
all of you.
thank you so much, ma'am, for your.
किसी को और खरीदनी है तो ये दो ले लो, चलो
Yeah. So, any more questions from anyone? Okay. So, thank you so much, ma'am, for your presence. It was really very insightful conversation that we had with you.
I want to give a few tips to Kalinga. Number one, if you are putting bottles, you are supposed to open it and keep because you cannot expect that I look at her, nod, and also open the bottle. Then there were many tips I wanted to give, but now I've forgotten. हाँ, these cushions is a good idea. ये लोग क्या करते हैं ना, खूबसूरत कुर्सियाँ लगा देते हैं. इतनी डीप होती है और कि आप छोटे फ्रेम के हो ना तो अंदर जाके सो जाओ और इसलिए एकदम ऐसे बैठो. अरे कुर्सी लगाने से पहले एक आधे वॉलंटियर को वहां बिठा के पूछो कि भाई आपको कैसा महसूस हो रहा है. नहीं,
Bhavna ji, this comes from your being so observant.
मैं एक वॉलंटियर्स को तो मैं एक खुद वर्कशॉप करना चाहती हूँ कि किस तरह से करना चाहिए. फ्री में.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, we would like Mr. Krishna to please felicitate you. Guys, please, please, sir.
अच्छा मैंने एक सेशन में तो ये ले लिया, क्यों दूसरा वेस्ट कर रहे हो?
Ma'am, it's an honor to have you by our side.
हम लोग एक फोटो निकालते हैं. ये आप डोंट वरी, ये फोटो मेरे को कोई नहीं देगा. मैंने अपना इंस्टाग्राम में डाल नहीं पाऊँ, ये वेस्ट हो. अच्छा इस वक्त तो शी इज लुकिंग द चीपेस्ट.
Can I ask a question? No, it's nothing to do with the interview. I just wanted to know, how did you like Orissa, and would you like to come back here?
I would like to come back. This is my second trip, and both the times I would tell the person or the organizer कि मैं उड़ीसा आती हूँ मगर मुझे पूरी जाना है.
Oh,
तो
sure.
जाते ही पहला सवाल, पहला आंसर बोलेंगे बहुत दूर है और बहुत भीड़ है. तो जाना है क्या? मगर दूर है और भीड़ है तो क्या हुआ? पूरी तो जाएंगे ना.
जाना है. You can't leave Orissa without going to Puri. Thank you.
जाके आई मैं इस बार.
Nice. Thank you so much.
अच्छा, ये कुछ कमाल का है. हाँ, मैं लेकर जा. बिल्कुल.
आप एक सेकंड रुकिए, मैं किताब लाता हूं.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, it was really a very insightful session. Really, ma'am. Really, ma'am. I was really paying very kind attention to the session, ma'am. It was really amazing. Yeah, so. एक request. Okay. See, random. Random.
नाही कोई. You get it from. But see, where should very well conducted.
Thank you so much.
He'll be here or should be going?
For some time.
Is there any other session here?
No, sir.
I'll just get the book.
Sure, sir. Sure.